It's Sunday morning in Ottawa. It is time for the Ottawa Marathon at Ottawa Race Weekend. It is a cool, partly cloudy morning, pretty good running conditions. There is an elite field and thousands of other amateur runners who are participating in this wonderful annual event in the nation's capital. We're looking forward to bringing you coverage of the Ottawa Marathon this morning on Rogers TV and at runottawa.ca along with Rob Walker. I'm Mark Sutcliffe. Good morning and welcome to our coverage. We had lots of fun bringing you the 10K race last night. It was an exciting finish and we're looking forward to more great racing today, Rob.
Yes, I really like that whole gender gap scenario where we were intrigued to see whether the elite men would catch the elite women. Indeed they did, and we've got two world-class fields this morning. It is a little chilly, hence the jackets, but I'm assured it will get warmer as the morning unfolds, and it's going to be a very, very long day for you.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit more coming up, but once we are finished doing this telecast this morning covering the elite marathon race at 10 o'clock this morning, 3 hours after the official start of the race, I'm going to run the marathon. So I'm going to do a bit of a duathlon of sorts this morning, a television broadcast, and then I'm going to run the marathon. We'll tell you a little bit more about that coming up this morning. So I've got, underneath all of this, I've got my running gear on, I've got my running shoes on, and I'll be ready to go at 10 o'clock this morning. Should be fun.
Yeah, it's a good story. I did mention to you last year, but I didn't think you'd take me literally at my word.
This started with you, and you suggested that it was possible because the course is open for 7 hours, and so we do a 3-hour broadcast, or we do a broadcast that lasts 3 hours after the start, so that gives me 4 hours to still run. And then it kind of snowballed from there into a bit of a theme of a talk that I gave, but we'll have lots of time to talk about that this morning. We also have a great elite race this morning. As you mentioned, there are some world-class athletes who are in this race. Who are you looking forward to seeing out there on the course at the front of the pack?
Well, two in particular. Elliot Kanui is the defending champion. It was a funny build-up for him last year because he hadn't finished in Vienna, so it was a bit of a last-minute decision to come and run Ottawa. He obviously enjoyed the experience and winning, and he's back. And you know what? His stride and the way he runs, it's like silk in motion. He's such a smooth athlete. He's been around a really, really long time. And as far as the women are concerned, there's an Ethiopian by the name of Galleta Burka. She's a former world cross-country champion. She's a former world indoor champion over 1,500 metres. She had, by her own very high standards, a slightly wobbly beginning to her relationship with marathons. Finished 6th in Dubai earlier this year, but while she may think, well, hang on, that's not too good, she ran just a shade outside 2 hours 20. And she indicated in the press conference that she's beginning to come to terms and get to grips with the distance, because I've run marathons, you've run marathons. It can take a long time for you to work out your relationship with 26.2, and I think she's now done that. So this is an opportunity for her to begin to stamp her authority on the marathon in the way that she did as a cross-country runner and a world indoor performer. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Galleta Burka.
Yeah, for those people who have run marathons, you know that it's a different kind of race from any other, even much different from a half marathon. And I remember when I was training for my very first marathon in 2004, the Ottawa Marathon, I did a clinic at the running room, and I remember the instructor saying, you probably have to run about 10 marathons before you really know what you're doing. And I thought, 10 marathons? I don't even know if I can do one. So it really shows you how some of these athletes who graduate to the marathon run their first and turn in a terrific performance. There are elite athletes who have won in the very first marathon they've run.
Yes.
And that shows you just how remarkable that is, because it is a distance that takes you to some uncomfortable places.
It does.
And it's not the same. I've talked to lots of runners, amateur runners and elite athletes, who have really experienced difficulties in their first couple of marathons until they've sorted out the distance a little bit.
I always like to think of a marathon as a bit like a relationship. No matter how much preparation you put in, you can always be surprised in a manner you weren't expecting, and you've got to work at it. It doesn't come easy, and you're always going to go through bad patches, but you always have to remind yourself, of the end goal, you're going to get there.
Yeah. All right, let's show you exactly how long the marathon is. We can walk you through the course right now for the Scotiabank Ottawa Marathon. We're going to start in downtown Ottawa, as always. The runners will travel along the Rideau Canal, first on the Colonel By side, then switch over to the Queen Elizabeth side, run all the way to Dow's Lake, and then they are going to travel through the Civic Hospital area and down into West Wellington and Westboro. Before they turn towards the Ottawa River, they'll run through Tunney's Pasture in the west end of the city, make a little bit of a loop on the Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway, turn around, head back towards downtown Ottawa. They will pass the War Museum in downtown Ottawa and then turn into Gatineau, Quebec. This is a race that is run in 2 different provinces, in Ontario and Quebec. They will run through Gatineau, then cross back onto the Alexandra Bridge, the oldest bridge in Ottawa, and then head into Rockcliffe. They will do a loop in Rockcliffe as they get to 30 kilometers and beyond, circle around near the Governor General's residence at Rideau Hall, and then turn back towards the finish line. And they'll cover some of the same parts of the course as the first couple of kilometers and then head to the finish here in downtown Ottawa. The course records for this race were both set in 2014, 4 years ago. Yemeni Tsegai and Tigist Tufa, both of Ethiopia. It was quite a day for Ethiopians, breaking the course records in the marathon for the men and the women. And Yemeni Tsegai is one of the people who is running here again today.
Yeah, and he's in good form, and he's got right to believe that he could challenge Kanui as he tries to mount a successful title defence. I think there's an outside chance of a course record, but it partly depends. It's quite windy, Mark. You can probably see that the flags are fluttering behind us. Tsegai is a quality athlete. They've asked the pacemakers to go out in 2:07 on the nose, so that tells you if the pacemakers manage to do that and the wind begins to die down, it is possible that we will get a course record, but it very much depends on the weather, I think. And as far as the women are concerned, Galleta Burka, as I mentioned, has run inside 2:21, although she has only done that once. They've asked for the first 10K at 2:24 pace, and then they've asked for an increase after 10K to sub 2:20 pace. So it's possible that just as we had in 14, we could see 2 course records, but there's a lot of running to be done between now and when we turn and watch them come across the line.
But it sounds like the women are approaching this a little bit more aggressively in comparison to the course record than the men are.
Yeah, because I can't remember too many marathons where they've asked as early as 10K for there to then be a split. So in theory, what we may well see in the elite women's race is 2 groups beginning to form quite quickly, because we're usually having 3 pacemakers. 1 pacemaker has been told to increase his pace at 10K. So in theory, we'll get an instant glimpse of those who feel they're in really, really good shape, because they'll go with the first guy. The others will maintain their pace with the 2 pacemakers just behind.
And the pacemakers, of course, are a big part of the story. We'll be seeing them a lot, and in fact, in some cases, we may have a better look at them than we do at the elite athletes who are running in behind them, just because of the way that it tends to unfold, where the elite runners will fall in behind the pacemakers, and then all of a sudden they will disappear at a certain point in the course, 30K, 32K, 35K, something in that range.
Yeah, it's interesting because for people who've never watched a marathon before, you have to keep reminding them, right, remember, so and so and so and so are pacemakers, and then the race proper really begins. You occasionally, as you mentioned, you'll get a pacemaker staying in until 32, 33, but nearly always at 30K, the last pacemaker drops out, and then you get the race proper over the last 12K. And some purists say that it's not a true reflection, because the pacemaker is an artificial way of helping to generate a quick time. I quite like it in the big city marathons, but if you watch a big city marathon and then you watch a major championship marathon for men or women, it's a completely different dynamic of race, because in a major championship, pacemakers are not allowed.
Yeah.
And in those instances, it's very much about gold, silver and bronze. The time is almost an irrelevance. But a lot of these elite men and women have turned up here because they want to run a fast time, they want to run a PB, and the pacemakers can help them do that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there are a couple of elements to it. I know there's controversy sometimes over whether it should be allowed, but ultimately the runners are still running at that pace. Their bodies are nobody is pulling them, nobody's touching them. They're not getting any sort of artificial boost. They're just getting the benefit of someone to run with and someone to set the pace. But their bodies still have to perform at that level. The other thing that's interesting is once in a while you will see one of the pacemakers stay in the race till the finish. They are allowed to do that. Doesn't happen very often, but we have seen it happen here in Ottawa before, where if they're still feeling good at 30K, they can continue on, and then they become one of the competitors instead of one of the people helping the elite athletes.
Yeah, I love to see that. It's very occasional, but might happen in the instance, say, for example, you have a pacemaker with a really good half marathon PB, and there are some helping out today who are in that position, but they've never run a marathon. If they've been elected to be the pacemaker to carry on until 30K, they might get a sense that those they're guiding are getting a little bit tired, and they think, well, hang on a minute, I actually feel okay here, and it's only 7 odd miles to go. I'm going to have a crack. But it's very rare, but it's fun when it does happen.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the fact that there are Canadians in the race as well, and we're going to show you some numbers. Here are the Canadian records in the marathon, and as you can see, the men's record was set in 1975, 43 years ago, by Jerome Drayton, and it has not been broken since, even with some great Olympic athletes like Eric Gillis, Reed Coolset. It hasn't been broken in that time. And the women's record, though, which stood from the 1970s until very recently, was broken by Lanny Marchand in 2013. 2 hours, 28 minutes. Krista Duchesne in that same race got under Sylvia Ruger's record at the time. So 2 women broke the record that day, but Lanny Marchand was faster than Krista Duchesne. Krista Duchesne, who went on to win the bronze at the finish on the podium in 3rd place at the Boston Marathon this year. Very wet and windy and cold Boston Marathon. A great Canadian performance for Krista Duchesne in that event at 41 years of age. We'll see how the Canadians do. We'll be following them as well. There's also another interesting athlete on the women's side, Sarah Hall, who is part of one of the most famous racing couples in America, the wife of Ryan Hall, and Sarah Hall will be doing the marathon today.
Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing Sarah. Ryan is a sub-205 man. He's now retired, and he's here supporting Sarah. She's made an interesting transition because she was Pan American champion over the steeplechase, but she's now a world-class marathon runner in her own right. She was at the press conference on Friday, looked fairly relaxed, and she was asked, I know you've just touched on the Canadian times and you know how long some of those records, especially the men's, has stood back to the year I was born in 75. She was asked, Sarah, about her aspirations and her realistic intentions in this race, bearing in mind that her lifetime best is outside 2:27 and Galleta Burka's run inside 2:21. But she said, what I've learned from Ryan is that having certain times is great going into a race, but quite often the way a marathon unfolds and its unpredictability, very often athletes don't run the times that they should do because things can go wrong. As you know, you only need to
we saw that last night.
Yeah, you only need to be 1% off for whatever reason, and suddenly a 2:20 can become a 2:28. So she says, I run my own race, and if I'm consistent and I can run around 2:27 or maybe go for a PB and knock a minute or a minute and a half off, I could be there or thereabouts, and that's quite a sensible tactic. So we might not see her initially following, say, for instance, the upsurge in pace we're expecting at 10K, but she's a very, very consistent performer, and she's got a chance to feature in this race.
All right, let's join Kimothy Walker, who is chatting with the elite race coordinator, the elite athlete coordinator for Ottawa Race Weekend, including today's marathon, Manny Rodriguez.
Well, good morning. So we're here with Manny Rodriguez on what is turning out to be a bit of a windy morning. You organize all of the elites who have traveled here from around the world. You're watching the weather carefully. How much will it impact this race?
It'll have a fair impact. One nice thing is that it is very windy and that'll slow things down, but it's cool, which actually makes a much bigger difference. They can tuck in behind other runners, but you can't really cool down with the help of others.
Let's just talk about the exciting night last night, right? Your elites, the men and the women, that was probably the closest that I've seen it over the decade that I've been involved with the organization. Did that make you really happy as someone who put this team together?
I was very happy with it. Yeah, the whole thing panned out really well. I mean, it was great racing, and I was excited.
And the weather has turned out so much better. When we talked earlier this week, it was a little uncomfortable how bad the forecast was.
Yeah, it has been. It's been changing so much. I mean, even 2 days ago, there was a very different weather forecast. So, well, at least we're getting cool weather. So hopefully we'll get fast times.
The other thing that I wanted to ask you about when we were watching the racing last night, were those two of your favorites to win?
I would have picked the two men and the two women that came in. Those ones I would have picked. But I knew it was going to be very close, and they proved me right.
Well, have a great day today. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Timothy. Thank you, Manny. Once again, great job done by Manny Rodriguez to bring together a world-class field for the marathon this morning and for the 10K race last night. It was a great race last night in the 10K for both the men and the women. Here's a look at the elite men who will be competing for the top spot in the marathon today.
Yes, Elliot Kanui is the defending champion. He is such a good athlete. He's been around a long time. Fifth in the World Championships in Daegu 7 years ago, and he'll fancy this, but so too will Yamane Sege. I wonder whether he's bold enough to have a crack at his course record. 2:04.48. He was asked by one of the journalists on Friday, can you go quicker than that? He said, listen, that was a few years ago. Let's take it mile by mile. He's a wily old campaigner now at the age of 33. Got a silver medal in the World Champs in Beijing in brutal conditions 3 years ago. I was there for that one. It was one heck of a race. It really was. Ondoro's a very consistent performer. He might not be one of the quickest in the field on paper with 2:08 flat, but he's won 9 of the 19 marathons he's entered so far. And he's kind of been picking and choosing some of the lower profile races. This would be amongst the highest profile, the IAAF gold label status, richly deserved. Keep your eye out as well for the Eritrean Yared I'll brutalise his name, Yared Amsaron, 2:07.27. He's now coming towards the end of his career at the age of 38, but he's been around a long time, and he is a quality performer. Only just missed a medal at the World Champs in 2007. That's how long he's been performing towards the top end of the sport. Mike Morgan, 2:14. He might struggle to live with the pace of the early leaders, but I think Sege and Kanui will be equal favourites here. They have both won, and they have both produced very, very fast times. It'll be fascinating to see how that dynamic unfolds between the two of them.
And sometimes we see a little bit of a rivalry between the Ethiopians and the Kenyans. I mean, they all know each other. They've raced together before, but they've got two flags ready at the finish line, typically, an Ethiopian flag and a Kenyan flag. And it's sometimes we've seen a sweep of the podium or a sweep of the men's and women's winners by one country or the other. So we'll be watching that dynamic as well. There's quite a good African contingent here.
Huge. And, I've been very, very fortunate. I've travelled to quite a few of the training camps on either side of the Rift Valley. Kenya and Ethiopia separated by this vast expanse of beautiful green land. Sometimes people have a slightly one-dimensional view of Africa, that they think it's barren and dry and with a lot of dirt. There is a lot of dirt. You get that beautiful orange hue on some of the rural roads, but there's also fantastic green countryside. They're two nations for whom running, without any shadow of a doubt, is the national sport. It's very hard to put into context for those of us from the Western world just how high profile their male and female athletes are on both sides of the Rift Valley. It is absolutely huge. It's a source of immense pride, and that is why you have so many boys and girls running in the morning before they go to school, because the number one standout heroes and heroines in Kenya and Ethiopia, it's not footballers or American footballers or soccer players, it's runners. It's the beating heart of distance running at the very highest level, and it's always a privilege to watch their best athletes going toe-to-toe, as they will do here over 26.2 miles. It's an incredible, intense rivalry, one that I think is underpinned by respect, but make no mistake, if there's an Ethiopian and a Kenyan with a mile to go, they'll go eyeballs out to hammer the other one.
All right, let's take a look at the finish of last year's Ottawa Marathon. And here is Elliot Kanui. Ethiopia ready, because here comes Elliot Kanui to the finish line of the Ottawa Marathon. There he is, crossing the finish line and winning the marathon. And it was about 3 kilometers to go that he made his move.
That's right, and it was very, very hot last year. That winning time was just a shade outside 2:10. When you bear in mind, he's run 2:05 plus change. That shows you how tough those conditions were last year. But it's a different build-up for Kanui this year because, as we mentioned right at the beginning of our broadcast, last year he came here at very short notice, having dropped out of a marathon within a month, within his last month of arriving in Canada. This year, coming to Ottawa has been a predetermined focus, so it'll be fascinating to see how he goes towards the business end of the race. He will certainly be hoping that this is under 2:10 and significantly under, but we still don't really know how the weather's going to play out, because I know it's better for it not to be very, very warm, but this feels a little cool at the moment. But then we are 5 to 7. It may well get up to a nice warm temperature as the morning unfolds.
Yeah, different people have different ideal temperature for running a marathon. Some people like it cooler, some people like it warmer, so it may influence different runners in different ways. Here's a look at the elite women's field, including the Canadian Ludmila Korchagina, who's 46 years old but has had some great performances and has been the top Canadian here at the Ottawa Marathon several times.
Yeah, she's still going strong. I mean, at the age of 46, to be banging out mid 220s and 230s is a fantastic performance. The really interesting story here is Galleta Burka. World cross-country champion as a senior and a junior, world indoor champion over 1,500 metres, 2:20.47. That was a time set in Dubai at the beginning of this year. Has she begun to get to grips with the beast of 26.2 miles? Well, we'll get a further indication of that as the morning unfolds. Lucy Karimi, 2:24.26. That was when she won Prague a couple of years ago. There's so many Kenyans based in the Czech Republic. They have a thriving distance running community there known as Run Czech. A few very, very good Ethiopians, and another story from last year. Who could forget Hiwot Gebrekidan, who had a massive lead 12 months ago and then completely wilted in the last few kilometres. She managed to hang on for second place but interestingly, that was the last time she ran in 2017. It obviously took a lot of energy out of her. She's back in the kind of form that she produced in the lead up to last year's marathon. The question for her is whether she's learnt those lessons and how will she cope towards the business end of the race, because it all unravelled for her in spectacular fashion 12 months ago. And another two athletes to mention from that leaderboard. Herpa is a really, really intriguing young woman. World youth champion over 1,500 metres just a couple of years ago. She's only just turned 19. She's run 3 marathons. She's finished on the podium on each occasion. 2:25.54 is her PB, not 2:25.50. That was when she was third in Seville earlier this year. She is a really, really intriguing athlete. It's not that often that you'd have a global champion in the junior ranks over 1,500 metres suddenly jumping all the way up to the marathon without at least dipping her toe as a 5 or 10,000 metre runner. Very, very intriguing to see how she goes. And Eunice Chet too, 34 years of age. She's been around a while now. That 2:26.13 was when she won Eindhoven last year, so she's enjoying some of the best form of her career as she heads towards the last few years of her career. But Herpa, the 19-year-old, could be the surprise package here, because not too many people were talking about her in the press conference, but she's had 3 very, very good outings over the marathon. And I wonder whether she's got that arrogance stroke confidence of youth where she could really take it to the likes of her compatriot Galleta Burka.
All right, let's take a look at the finish of last year's women's race at the Ottawa Marathon. This is Guteni Imana of Ethiopia, who is crossing the finish line first. And as you mentioned, there was quite a lot of drama in the women's race last year.
Oh, there really was. I mean, the manner in which Gebri Keedin folded in the last few kilometres was agonising to watch. And it was Amana who came through to take full advantage of that. So, those were the 2 victories from last year. You can see those flags fluttering, Mark. I wonder whether it'll have died down enough for you when you head out there. This is going to be a really intriguing morning of racing.
There is the start line of the Ottawa Marathon in downtown Ottawa. We're expecting the race to begin in about 3.5 minutes. At 7 o'clock, all of the racers will go off together. Several thousand amateur runners along with the elite field that we have been describing. You can see some of the athletes warming up in the area in front of the start line. In the next couple of minutes, they will all line up behind the start. The race time temperature is about 14 degrees Celsius. It feels a little bit cooler than that at the moment, but that's what my weather app tells me the temperature is, 14 degrees. We do have a slight chance of rain. The forecast a couple of days ago had been calling for a lot of rain today, 5 to 10 millimeters of rain. Would have interfered with the race, would have been a factor, but the forecast started to change on Friday, and as of Friday we started seeing that it was going to be a little bit better. We do have some cloud cover, which is not a bad thing. Most runners prefer running on an overcast day than in the bright sunshine, especially as the temperature warms up over the course of the morning. So there is a chance of some precipitation, but it doesn't look like it's going to rain as much as we had once feared. And you can see some of the elite athletes with their names on their bibs in front of the field of amateur runners who are getting ready to run the Ottawa Marathon. It is the 44th edition of the Ottawa Marathon. An event started in the 1970s with just a few dozen people, like so many marathons at that time. A small group of committed runners, and it has grown into an event that includes several different races: a 2K, 5K, 10K, half marathon, marathon, kids marathon, and more than 30,000 participants this year in the event.
And half of those people come from outside this province, which helps to underline what a huge contribution this must make to the local economy.
Absolutely. You can see they're bringing the elite athletes forward to the start line. We're expecting the start in just over a minute from now. You can see the pace bunnies in the background for the amateur athletes, the 3-hour pace bunny holding up a sign there. There are pace bunnies for many different times, quite a large contingent of volunteers who run the race at a prescribed time, and any amateur athlete can follow along and know that they will finish in that time. They have them for all of the major times plus all of the Boston qualifying times. And as Rob pointed out, those flags are moving. So there is a breeze at the start line this morning, as there is here at the finish. About 30 seconds to go until the start. There's Sarah Hall.
Gebri Keedin just to her left, the woman who led for so long last year and then faded towards the end.
And unlike in the 10K, we're going to see the women and the men starting at the same time here, and the men, of course, will go out to the front of the pack, and we'll be tracking the women as well. Here we go. The 2018 Scotiabank Ottawa Marathon is underway. These runners will head north on Elgin Street and then make a turn by the War Memorial, which you can see in the distance there. And they will turn twice and start running south on Colonel By Drive in front of the Westin Hotel and the Shaw Conference Centre in downtown Ottawa. And from there, they will cross the Pretoria Bridge and then turn left onto Queen Elizabeth Drive and follow that all the way along the Rideau Canal to Dow's Lake at the start of this race. For many people, this is the end of a long road of training over the course of the winter in Ottawa and elsewhere. Thousands of runners have been preparing for this morning for months, 3 or 4 months in most cases. Some of them running the Ottawa Marathon for the first time, some of them completing their first marathon today. Others who have done this race many times. There are those who have done it 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, even more. Here's a great look at downtown Ottawa, the War Memorial in the center of your screen. Parliament Hill is just to your right in that shot. And here is a rather large group of men's elite runners off to an early lead.
These are great moments early on because you feel so good, Mark, that the whole point is that you, with your training at an elite level or an amateur level, that you've been getting your legs used to working when they're fatigued. So you follow a 15 or 20k training run with a 10k training run the next day, and then if you've gone through your tapering process correctly, you feel like $1 million on that start line because you're full of bounce, you're full of spring, you're excited. But it's very important for the likes of those runners going through shot now that they don't make the mistake of going too hard too early, because that last 6 miles can really bite you in the bum.
That's always the temptation, though, when you're around other runners and they're moving quickly and you're full of energy, you're excited to be underway, and you go out too fast and then you pay a price for it later. There are the lead runners passing in front of the Westin Hotel. That's the old government conference center, the former train station in Ottawa in the background there. It's been under some renovations for a long time. You can see this group of runners has just passed under the bridge in downtown Ottawa, the Mackenzie King Bridge. And we can see in that group, I know that you can see Julius Kogo is one of the athletes there. I think I saw Ezra Sang as well in that group.
Yeah, Sang and Kogo are likely to be the predetermined pacemakers. Sang has won the Warsaw Half Marathon this year. Kogo is in that lime green vest. He was 6th in the Toronto Marathon last year, silver medalist in the African Cross Country Championships. So that shows you the quality of those helping with the pacemaking duties. And Sege is just to the right of Kogo as we look now, just tucking in behind him. Sege, the former champion, winner in 2014 and holder of the course record 2:06.54, for which, by the way, he won a brand new car as well as all the prize money, because it was a Canadian all-comers record, only surpassed last autumn in Toronto. So former winner is there. Just looking out for Elliot Kanui. I'm pretty sure he will be in that group, although I can't see him just right at the moment. Really good quality in that lead group, Mark.
All the runners we expected to see here, and among those runners is Patrice Lafont of Canada. You can see him in the group on the right of your screen. He is the tallest of those 3 athletes in the background, wearing the black singlet.
Ondoro is the man wearing the t-shirt. I noticed that at the start. It's not often you see an elite athlete running in a t-shirt. There he is. He's one of the bigger figures. He was 3rd here a couple of years ago, ran 2:11. He has run 2:08 flat and has got a half marathon lifetime best of 61:45, just inside 62 minutes. So he's featured on the podium here in Ottawa in the past, and he's in that lead group. Might take these runners a little bit longer than 2:10 or 2:12, but they'll all deserve their medal at the finish line.
The course will be open for 7 hours, and they do tend to wait around for the last few runners even after that in the final few kilometers of the race. So we will see people crossing this finish line starting just after 9 o'clock this morning all the way until about 2 o'clock this afternoon. And in a few moments we'll be able to start showing you the lead women. The pace car that precedes the elite women doesn't really start until there's enough room for it to be on the course, because the elite women are in with all of the other runners in behind the lead group. But you can see here that there is a group of about 8 runners, including some pace setters.
Yeah, that's Mitai, Kogo and Sang, 3 very, very good half marathon runners. Mitai is on the left, the man we haven't spoken about a great deal. He's another sub-61 performer over the half marathon. And another potential contender here is Dariba Roby, the Ethiopian. He was running second on the right-hand side. As that camera swings round, there he is, just in that group. Believe it or not, this is Roby's 3rd marathon of the year, which is hard to believe considering that we're still in the month of May. He ran 2:12 in China in January. He was 7th in Seoul in March, and he was asked whether he'd be tired in the press conference on Friday, and he said, well, let's see, shall we? Just to put that into context, if you're not overly familiar with marathons, at this elite level, it's not uncommon for the best to only run 2 marathons in a year. So for this to be Roby's 3rd in 5 months really does indicate that he's a man who he's obviously used to running with a lot of miles in his legs. There he is, just sandwiched in between Kogo and Sang, wearing that orange singlet. So yet another world-class Ethiopian and Kenyan in this group, but there's a very, very long way to go. But certainly Mitai, Kogo and Sang look to be doing a good job in the early stages as the 3 pacemakers.
And there's Yemeni Segei at the right of your screen. And this group will continue on Colonel By Drive and then make a right turn onto the Pretoria Bridge and then switch over to the other side of the canal and run along Queen Elizabeth all the way to Dow's Lake. So they'll be making that turn, and you can see the distance between this group and the next group of runners in behind. They've already broken away from that group. There's about 10 runners here, including the pace setters.
I think really, as far as these guys are concerned, this is about just ticking off the early miles and the early kilometers with as little energy expended as possible. I just got a glimpse of Kiptanui in that group as well, the defending champion, 2:05.21 when he was 2nd in Berlin 3 years ago. He ran, we'd mentioned Roby, this being his 3rd marathon of the year. I wasn't sure what kind of shape Kiptanui would be in coming here, because he ran 2:08.20 and was 5th in Paris last month. Again, when he was asked about that in the press conference on Friday, he said, listen, I ran Paris, and you could think that perhaps he was telling a little fib on this, but actually I believed him when he said it, and it was quite a simple explanation. He said he decided to go to Paris as part of his training. He treated it as a training run. That's not too shabby, is it? You go to Paris, a pretty decent high-level marathon. I've commentated over there, some good races in previous years, and he ran 2:08.20 as part of his training for here in Ottawa. So he's made 6 podiums in 18 marathon appearances so far, and Kiptanui, the defending champion, warmed up for this with a sub 2:09 in Paris. We could only dream of such talent.
Yeah. You can also see that Workune Seyum of Ethiopia is in that lead group. He's been near the front, just in behind the pace setters, and now we're getting a look at the lead women on the right of your screen, who are being led by some pace setters and are also amongst some of the elite men who are not at the front of the pack. So we'll get a chance to see who's in this group shortly.
Yeah, well, there's Jonathan Mott, the American, just on the far left, wearing the lime t-shirt. and he's just ahead of the pacemakers who'll be hoping to do a really good job for these elite women. And the 10k marker is the point at which we need to watch carefully. Wow, there's a club runner coming through there. He's got his music on the go. He's not interested in the pacemakers and the elite women, Mark. He's mounted the curb and said, come on, out my way.
Yeah.
I'm going for a PB.
So you can see that there are two pace setters at the front of the group here, and the women are tucked in behind. And then there are some. Look, you've got a runner with gloves on the right of the screen. So that's a sense. It gives you a sense of how cool it is. Not very often we see runners with gloves on the final weekend in May in Ottawa. There have been some hot days for the marathon.
They really have. I couldn't believe how hot it was when I came last year. And there's Mott, and the man who came charging through on the curb is now just beginning to rock and roll a little bit. He's going to be flanked by the two elite female pacemakers shortly, but 10k is the point at which the elite women at the technical briefing yesterday decided they wanted an increase in pace from around about 2:24 to sub 2:20. So when they've done 6 miles, we might, depending on the bravery of the leaders who've asked for that increase in tempo, we might get a glimpse of those who've got aspirations for a very, very fast time here.
You can see that Patrice Lafont of Canada, who was with the elite men's lead group for a time, is now on the left of your screen on the women's side. So he's fallen back to where the elite women are running.
And I've just noticed he might be going over for a drink, perhaps. On Doro, you could just see in the back of shot the man who's running in the t-shirt, who was third here a couple of years ago. He's allowed a little bit of distance to grow between himself and this lead pack, so it could be something of nothing. But for a man of his class and caliber, there he is now on the left. You can see that Ondoru has allowed a gap to grow, and there's no reason really for that gap to exist unless he went off for a comfort break, in which case he'd be closing that gap fairly quickly. So perhaps one of the men who's finished on the podium here in recent years is having a problem in the early stages. Ondoru, the earliest casualty so far, with only 12 minutes on the clock.
Now you do see from time to time someone will break off and then rejoin the group. So it's early enough that can still happen. But it is a bit of a surprise to see him drop off so suddenly and in such a pronounced fashion. So there has been some attrition from the initial group, and we now have a group of about 9 runners, including the 3 pace setters at the front of the pack, as the men move through the first 15 minutes of the course here, running along Queen Elizabeth Drive.
And this was the point at which we saw the break from Bertu in the 10k yesterday. He was storming along by the water. Very impressive performances in the elite men's and women's 10k yesterday. I do love that gender gap scenario in the IAAF Gold Label race. I'm wondering whether that will be adopted by some of the other world-class races around the planet. We shall see. But other than Ondoru, who you can just still see on the left of picture, he's not completely isolated, but there's no real reason for him to have allowed that gap to grow. We've got the defending champion Kiptanui running on the far right, the former winners Sege, the course record holders, just at the back of that group. There he is, Sege, just probably 4th from the left, and the 3 pacemakers doing a solid job here. One by one they will peel away, and we would expect under normal circumstances the last remaining pacemaker to drop out no later than 30k, leaving the leaders to run the last 7 miles alone.
Deribe Roby is in that group as well. You can see in the middle, along with Workune Seyum, who's on the left in behind the pace setters. These athletes are running along the historic Rideau Canal in Ottawa, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Let's learn a little bit more about the canal.
A magnificent waterway bisects the city of Ottawa and the Ottawa Marathon Racecourse. It is called the Rideau Canal, constructed between 1826 and 1832 under the direction of British Lieutenant Colonel John By. The canal was originally built as a naval thoroughfare between Ottawa and the city of Kingston. Today, the canal is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. For local residents, the canal's stunning vistas and pathways are a feature attraction for recreation and leisure activities. And in winter, it is transformed into the world's largest skating rink.
Here are the men's leaders in the Ottawa Marathon on a cool and breezy Sunday morning in Ottawa. It has certainly been warmer than this on Marathon Sunday at Ottawa Race Weekend. And we'll see how the weather factors into the running today for not just the elite athletes, but for the amateur runners who are on the course today. Thousands of them from all over the world. Many right here in Ottawa, but many visitors to the capital as well. And you can see the elite women's group on the right-hand side of your screen.
And by the way, Mark, I've just had some splits through on my phone. Such is the way of the modern world. Amazing. The elite men through 5K in 15:12. Just a couple of seconds separating those leaders. That is, it's around about what? 2:08, 2:09. 15:25 would be 2:10. So it's a sensible early pace for the leading elite men. 15:12 through 5K. And the elite women have gone through 5K in 16:52. So just doing my sums. Yeah, that's good running. 16:52. If it was 17 minutes at 5K, that would be around 2:24. So this is good running from the leading elite women. And as a result, when we get to see the lead group, when we get to a stage where they focus exclusively on the elite women, I would have thought that lead group will be very, very small, because only one woman in that elite women's race has run inside 2:24 before, and that's Galleta Burka, who ran sub 2:21 in Dubai in January. It's a very ambitious early pace for the women. That's the headline so far.
9 men crossed the 5K mat in 15 minutes and 13 seconds. And then, as we mentioned, Dominic Ondoro had dropped back a little bit, and he is 11 seconds behind that group, or was at 5K. And then it's another minute behind that for all of the other runners in the men's field. We should mention that one of the men who's in that lead group is John Career, who's the brother of Wesley Career, who is an accomplished athlete, humanitarian, Kenyan politician, and just a larger-than-life figure in the sport of long-distance running. So John Career, Wesley Career's brother, is in that lead group, or was at 5K, and we are going to hear from Wesley Career a little bit later in our telecast.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Former winner of Boston, lifetime best of 2:06. Fourth here in Ottawa back in 2014. A real figurehead for Kenyan sport, Kenyan athletes, and Kenyan politics. It'll be a delight to have him alongside us in the commentary position, overlooking the finish, where we still have the flags, your brilliantly distinctive national flag fluttering behind us over the finish. You'll be hoping that that wind does die down a little bit as the race unfolds. But I think what we can ascertain from the two 5K splits we've had from the men and the women, the men, pretty sensible, sub 2:10. We would have expected that, and that's what the pacemakers were asked for. But the women's pacemakers have gone out pretty hard, and they've really and clearly decided to go for it. We were expecting sub 2:24 pace from those lead pacemakers for the elite women after 10k, but they've gone out very hard, and there are either going to be some very tired women at the end of the race, or there'll be several producing lifetime bests.
And we can tell you that among the elite women, there were 7 who crossed the 5K mat in either 16:54 or 16:55, and Sarah Hall was about 10 seconds behind that group, the American runner, about 10 seconds back at 17:04. You're getting a shot now of not just, or just a moment ago, you saw the lead Canadian in the race as well. We'll be updating that race over the course of our coverage today.
Yes, at 5k, it was Sami Gibril, who was just a few seconds ahead of Woodbine, and there he is. 2:22 in Toronto last year, Sami Gibril. He was just outside the world's top 100 in the World Half Marathon Championships in Valencia at the end of March. And it's interesting, Mark, you have the same Gibril, obviously an expatriated Ethiopian now flying the flag for Canada, and you have exactly the same attitude here that we do in Britain. Mo Farah, our legendary 10,000 metre runner, 5,000 metre runner, who's now running the marathons and came 3rd in London last month. Born and spent the first few years of his life in Somalia, now absolutely and rightly embraced as a proud Brit. And it's interesting looking at your leading athletes in a number of sports. I happen to follow tennis as well. Milos Raonic came to Canada when he was 8 from Montenegro, and he said, I absolutely feel Canadian. The country has given me a great start in life for myself and my family. You are a very welcoming nation, and it's great to see athletes born in other countries being embraced as one of your own.
It's a big part of the culture here. So many Canadians are people who were born in another country or whose parents moved here. You can see the lead men now who have turned away from the Rideau Canal and Dow's Lake. The lead women have just passed Dow's Lake and are turning off as well. The men running on Sherwood Avenue, and they're going to be heading over towards the West Wellington area. And still a group of about 7 or 8 runners there. And you can see the women have just turned on to Preston. That's HMCS Carleton in the background.
A much smaller group from the elite leading women, and you would expect that at the pace they're pushing. This is a little steadier for the men. Inside 2:10, Roby is still there. Just looking to see how many women I can spot in that group. One or two have already become detached, but it's not surprising. Only one woman has run inside 2:24 before, so the 2 pacemakers doing a good job here, but these women are in uncharted territory and they haven't been running for 25 minutes yet, so it's a very, very bold declaration by those choosing to follow the 2 pacemakers here. Looks to me as though there are 4 in that lead group.
Yeah. Burka is one of them. You can see her in between the 2 pace setters.
She's the tiny figure in the blue. She's quite distinctive looking.
Gebra Keaton is there in the peach-colored top.
And she was the woman who led for so long last year and then faded badly in the closing stages. So she'll be hoping that she will have learnt that lesson from 12 months ago.
Still a group of about 9 men at the front of the pack. And here are the numbers for the men as they crossed 5 kilometers. Not surprising to see those 5 athletes at the front of the pack. So that was 10 minutes ago now. They've traveled at least another 3K since then.
This is good, sensible running by the elite men. There's plenty of time to wind the wick up and head towards Segei's course record of 2:06.54. Just want to get through these early miles with as much energy conserved as possible. The leading elite women peeling off to get some drinks. Pacemakers helping one or two of the leading athletes, which is good to see. Very important, Mark. You know this, although I gather you're not someone who tends to drink that much during a marathon. So important for these women to keep the fluids coming, even though at this stage in the cool conditions they won't necessarily feel thirsty. Golden rule in marathon running: the moment you feel thirsty, you're already dehydrated.
Yeah. The first half of the race is really about putting yourself in position for the second half of the race, and especially for the final 10K. And whatever nutrition, whatever fluids or other nutrition you're taking on is part of that, as well as the pace that you run in the first 20 or 30 kilometers of the race.
Yeah, they always say, and you kind of bulk at this before you run your first marathon, but they say in terms of how your body feels, 20 miles is halfway.
Yeah.
That's how much the last 6 miles can take out of you, because when you get to 20 you think, well, 6 miles is nothing. I've done that on a short training run on a morning, but running 6 miles when you've got 20 in your legs is a completely different proposition.
There's that expression: a marathon is 20 miles of hope and 6 miles of truth. The lead men have now turned on to Wellington and are traveling through Hintonburg in the west end of Ottawa. They'll travel through the neighborhood of West Wellington and then Westboro. Still a sizable group of men. Interesting to see so many of them at the front of the pack, and only 4 women leading the elite women's field.
Well, and there's one simple reason for that they've gone out with such a very, very fast early pace. We were expecting that to come in from the 10K marker, but they've gone very hard right from the beginning, the elite women. This has been much more conservative and a much more sensible pace from the leading elite men. You can absolutely guarantee, Mark, that there will be casualties as a result of this fast early pace for the elite women. Not sure how long it will take for one or two to drop off. If they don't, all 4 of the leading women will be producing personal bests, and that the fact that graphic gives you 5 athletes running together at 5K, they have already become a little bit more split than that.
Yeah.
But Burka and Gebrekidin right up there, along with Berry Makuria, Lucy Karimi. But the really interesting one to watch there will be Galleta Burka, World Junior and World Senior cross-country champion and a World Indoor champion at 1,500 meters.
Interesting to see them all in single file in behind the 2 pace setters on the women's side, and there may have even been some contact there, because I noticed Burka looking over her shoulder at Gebrekidin at one point.
It's always possible that heels are clipped.
They always run so close together.
Yeah, they do.
I find it amazing. The course is so wide and vast, and you've got so much time. You don't need to be within just a few inches of each other, and yet so many times they are.
Yeah, and when you're watching a major championship 10,000 meters or 5,000 meters, certainly as far as the heats and the early laps are concerned, in at least a quarter of those races, somebody always ends up falling over, and the reason they fall over is that they clip the heels of the man or woman directly in front of them. But a bold early pace from the leading elite women. It'll be interesting to see them through 10K, just to try and work out whether they've slowed down a fraction or whether they're still on for sub 2:24. Really good work by the pacemakers for the elite men's race. Plenty of time for them to start winding up the wick, and
they've just crossed 10 kilometers in the men. That's the 10K mark that they just crossed right there where those green pylons are.
Yep.
And so they did it in just over 30 minutes, about 30 minutes and 15 seconds, something in that range.
Right, so they've increased their pace. 30 minutes on the nose is 2:06.5. So they're now running, well, around about 2:07 pace, which is what they were asked to do, the pacemakers, before the race. 2:07 would give them an outside chance of Segei's course record of 2:06.54. So a relatively conservative first 5K, a little bit faster on the second 5K, and they're pretty much bang on 2:07, which is what they were asked to produce in the technical meeting yesterday.
As the runners make their way through West Wellington and into Westboro, let's find out a little bit more about this neighborhood.
This is the breathtaking Saint-François d'Assisi Church. Built in 1913, it is located on Wellington Street at the gateway to popular Hintonburg and Westboro neighborhoods. In the early days, these were modestly populated residential areas. Today, Hintonburg and Westboro have transformed into vibrant shopping and entertainment districts with popular restaurants, markets, theaters, and a hub for community activities that attract visitors from around the nation's capital.
There are the lead men making their way into Westboro. The lead women are in the West Wellington area, and we've already seen some attrition on the women's side in this race, a little bit on the men's side as well. I think that is still the Ondoro, who was with the lead group initially but has fallen a few meters back, who you can see in the distance in the shot on the men's side. It's great to welcome to our broadcast Canadian Olympian Eric Gillis. Eric, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, Mark. Good morning, Rob.
Morning.
Great to have you here. So it's a cool morning. Do you like this temperature for running?
Yeah, I walked out of the hotel this morning and I was a bit chilly in my t-shirt, which is great marathoning conditions.
Yes. Yeah. What would your ideal temperature be for running a marathon?
It would be overcast like this. It would probably be close to these temperatures, maybe a bit cooler, single digits, but it's pretty darn close to that right now.
Yeah. Yeah, at the start of the race it was 14 degrees, but it felt a little bit cooler than that. So I think this is close to ideal temperatures, although there is a bit of a breeze, and you don't necessarily want that.
It's hard not to get a breeze. You know, racing outdoors and on the roads, we're always going to get something. So I would say in this weather, marathoners are probably not even thinking about the breeze right now. It's pretty good conditions.
Walk us through what you would do on the morning of a marathon like this one.
So my alarm would go off 3 hours before. I would wake up.
That'd be 4 a.m. in this case.
Yeah, 4 a.m. And I wouldn't do too much in the first hour and a half. It would be just getting some food into me right away. So I'd have a very light breakfast, some toast. And I like to have coffee right away when I wake up, water and coffee. But on race morning for a marathon, I save it for about 90 minutes out. Then I start sipping on the coffee. Getting some water, though, and electrolytes in, and having another snack 90 minutes out. Then I start sipping on the coffee, and that's usually when I'm leaving the hotel or leaving the staging area and going towards the finish or the start line and seeing other people for the first time.
Right. And then what are you doing right before? We saw, just as the race started, we saw some of the athletes warming up in the area in front of the start line. Do you like to do that? I know there are some who like to do some running before the race. It seems almost counterintuitive. You're about to run 42 kilometers. So why would you want to run more? But there is something to warming up the legs, right?
Yeah, shorter distances I'll actually warm up to 20 minutes total of running with some strides. And for a marathon, I really just get enough running in the legs to be able to handle that first kilometer at race pace. So that can be as few as 5 or 6 minutes of running with a couple of light pickups, and really saving most of that energy for the actual race.
Yeah. I don't like to run before a marathon because I figure I'm going to be running enough.
You use the first couple kilometers as a warm up.
Yeah,
yep.
Exactly. But I'm not striving for the pace that you are in the first few kilometers.
I'm always amazed when you run a marathon how many times you feel like you need to go to the toilet in the last 20-25 minutes. It feels like you want to go every 2 minutes, even though there's nothing left because you've just been. But
those are the nerves. Yeah,
it's just the last few minutes. It just seems to be agony, and it's a feeling of such relief when the race actually starts, because then you think, okay, I've done the training, I'm ready for this. Now I can get on with the job in hand.
Yep.
It's the last few minutes, even on a club runner's level, that's agony. Is it the same for the elites?
It is similar. It is. I tell a lot of now my athletes, and I've told myself over the years, is I've got to save a bit of energy in that warm-up, in the final hours, for anything that comes up during that time that I need to deal with that I wasn't expecting, whether it be I forgot something at the hotel, just something little, and it just surprises me. Just save a little bit of energy to deal with that, mentally think through it. But once you get on the line and you're actually starting, for that kind of stuff is now behind you, and you're in the race.
I have a friend who runs marathons and basically goes to the area where the portable toilets are, lines up, goes to the bathroom, then comes out and gets back in the line again. Just to time it right.
Yeah, it's a bit more sociable than just going behind a tree. We're watching the elite men. I've got a question for you, Eric. The elite women have gone through 10K in 33:32 as we watch now we are on the elite women. How surprised are you, Eric? Now, we were told that in the technical briefing yesterday they'd asked for around about 2:24 plus change, and they then asked for an increase of pace down to 2:20 at 10K. Now, by my calculations, 33:32, that is inside 2:22 pace already, probably 2:21. Only one woman in this field has ever run inside 2:24. That's Galleta Burka, who was sixth in Dubai with 2:20.43 or 45. Are you surprised at just how boldly they've started, bearing in mind only Burka has run at anywhere close to this pace in a marathon before?
I am surprised, and on the other hand, when your training's going well and you look at people that run these fast times, they often have big jumps. So if some of these athletes feel like they're ready to take a big jump, the conditions today would indicate you could do that here with the weather. And they know their training, and I noticed the flag there too that was on their back, so maybe they're taking advantage of a little bit of a breeze at their back these early stages.
Good look at the elite men in the Ottawa Marathon. Several of the athletes bunched together, and we saw in that group Dugna Tekili. Also John Career is in that group, second from the left. Yemeni Segai, the course record holder.
Kipchanui's on the right, the defending champion. He's just obscured a little bit there by Sang, and that's been his position all the way through this group. He's been on the left as he would look at it, on the far right as we're looking. But the three pacemakers are doing an excellent job here. This is nice and steady for the elite men. They've been asked to get to halfway at around about 2:07. And it looks as though that's exactly what they're doing. And Sege, the course record holder, 2:06.54, right in the centre of that bunch, in the distinctive orange vest. There's some real quality in this group, and an interesting dynamic that you have two men who know what it takes to win on this course. Sege in 2014, Kipchanui last year. And Ondora is still going. You can see him right in the distance between the shoulders of Mitai and Kogo. He's running in the T-shirt, obviously deciding that he's better off running at his own pace because he hasn't been completely detached. He's probably running, what? He's 2:08 and a bit.
He's 20 seconds, he was 20 seconds behind at 10K, and you can see they've now passed 13K in the marathon. There is a 10K banner there as well. That's for the half marathon course, which differs slightly from the marathon course in the first half. They don't go as far into Westboro. They turn sooner. So this group of athletes is about to turn again. They're in Tunney's pasture, the office complex, government office complex in the west end of Ottawa, and they're about to turn, and once they do, they will be heading to a different part of the complex, and then they'll be turning towards the Ottawa River, and they'll run along the Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway out and back to Island Park Drive. And here's the group of women leading the field.
What a bold pace this is. Well on course for a big time. Burka and Gebri Keedin. Burka, probably the pre-race favourite. Gebri Keedin, remember, who faded badly in the last couple of kilometres 12 months ago and hung on for second. Herpa is the 19-year-old Ethiopian I was mentioning, former world youth champion over 1,500 metres. What an unusual career change for her, Eric. Won the world youth title just a couple of years ago. No races recorded at any distance in between 1,500. Suddenly, at the age of 18, she steps up to the marathon and has run 3 marathons, in all of whom she's finished on the podium.
Amazing. Wow, that's impressive. That doesn't happen very often.
Looks like we're down to 2 women leading the race now from 4 a few moments ago. They're just in behind this one pace setter, 41 minutes into the race.
Maybe even only one female behind the pace setter with another male.
No, there's a group of 4 there. Pace setter,
yep,
2 women, and then a male runner.
Yeah, I see that now.
And is that Tristan Woodfine?
So Tristan is a former training partner of mine in Guelph, and he's now in school to be a paramedic. So I asked him in the hotel the other day how his training was going. He said very well. He's just getting used to the night shifts.
Maybe doing a few runs on the way back home in the morning before he goes to bed. So a pretty good CV. He's run 65 minutes for the half, once last year, once this year. 29.54, third in the Toronto 10K a couple of years ago.
You can see he's joined a group of other runners now who were just ahead of him until now.
So it looks like the Hanson Brooks Project runners out of Michigan.
Right.
Do you know, that now that you've mentioned that, I saw, when I was walking down here to the start, I saw a really distinctive van with the Hanson's Project logo emblazoned on the side. Very distinctive advertising, because I remember thinking, I'll have to find out what that's all about.
So that's the same group as this year's women's Boston Marathon champ, Desi Linden. She would be in that group of athletes and train with those coaches.
Now you mentioned Guelph and the fact that Tristan Woodfine has trained with you in Guelph. There's quite a good thing going on there that you've been part of the last few years, right?
Yeah, the last better part of 15 years I've been going. Either in the summertime when I was still attending St. FX, and then I moved there full time once I graduated. And it's the place to be as a distance runner in Canada. We have a big group there with the Speed River Track and Field Club and Coach Dave Scott Thomas, and a lot of good things happening there. And now even with the rest of the track and field events with a good sprints coach and Jason Kerr, and just a lot of great things happening there in athletics.
And Krista Duchesne is nearby.
Absolutely,
right?
And part of the club. She's a Speed River member.
Krista Duchesne, who finished 3rd at the Boston Marathon in April, Canadian Olympian. Here's a good look at Tristan Woodfine.
Continuing the Canadian theme, really impressive for the elite Canadian women last night. 5 in the top 10. I thought Rachel Cliff is having a fantastic season. Another PB last night.
Yep, another PB on the roads, and she's really responding to the distance. I noticed in the media release she talked about doing more mileage and increasing it slowly, and she's I think adapting to the longer distances really well, as are a lot of Canadian women right now.
surely only a question of time before she has a crack at the marathon. I mean, I know she's still got a lot of running to do on the track, and she wants to make sure that in Tokyo she doesn't miss out as she did in Rio through no fault of her own, having had the qualifying time for the 5,000. But maybe after Tokyo, a crack at the marathon for her.
Yeah, I think just with her volume increasing and her more and more exposure on the roads, it seems like the natural progression.
It looks like on the women's side, it's down to Burka and Gebra Keaton. Those are the two women, I think, who are sandwiched in between those two male runners on the course right now.
Yes, because at the 10K split, Herpa, the teenager, was around about 10 seconds off the pace. It could be a fascinating duel. And if you're just joining us, the real question will come in this elite women's race as to whether Hiwot Gebrehiwot, the Ethiopian who is alongside or just behind Galleta Burka, whether she's learnt her lesson from 12 months ago when she unravelled spectacularly in the last few kilometres. In mitigating circumstances for her, very different weather this year. It was absolutely boiling 12 months ago, and maybe that contributed to the problems she endured in the closing stages, but it was a spectacular collapse. It really was, with 5 or 6k to go when she had looked in such a commanding position. That's going to be the question if the two of them are still together come the business end of this race.
You can see the pace setter and the lead women grabbing some nutrition on the way, even sharing it. That's Burka at the front of the pack for the women.
What an amazing CV she's got, Eric. She's a former world cross-country champion, a former world indoor champion over 1,500 metres. I think she got a medal in the 10,000 a few years ago in Moscow in 13. And here she is now, not too far away from becoming a sub-220 marathon runner. That is quite some CV, bearing in mind, you know, that a global title has come at 1,500 metres, and here she is, a world-class marathon runner.
That is very impressive. I mean, maybe that confidence from all that experience is coming through here, and she knows she's in shape and wants to go for it.
Eric, tell us a little bit about the first half of the race and what you're trying to do, because it really is about setting the stage for the finish, right? There's a lot of groundwork in the first half.
Yeah, I like to, at shorter distances than the marathon, I like to get to halfway point and feel like I can do that again. Okay, that was tough, but the second half, I envision being able to do that another half. Now, the marathon's interesting because we often talk about it, the race really starting at 32 kilometers. So once you get to halfway, 21.1, you really gotta, I have to suspend that feeling like I'm at half and almost wait until 30 kilometers to feel like I'm at half. And that first 30 kilometers, it's a lot of a waiting game. It's a waiting game for the race to actually start, and to get to 25k and feel like, okay, I still want to wait, to see how I'm feeling until I get to around 32, 33 kilometers, and then I can really assess where I'm at and go for it at that point. So they're on a fast pace here. They look like they're feeling good, but yet they still need to be patient.
Well, I have to apologise for taking a banana. I know you can't see us now, but the nutrition's important, even in the commentary box. Question for you, Eric. A really good friend of mine was a better marathon runner than me. There is the banana, by the way. There we go. We're in it for the long haul. We really are. A very good friend of mine who's a half-decent club runner and a very good mathematician. He used to set himself, far brainier than me, he used to set himself equations to solve in the second half of the race to try and take his mind off the pain. Now, I'd be struggling to do 35. I'd be struggling to do the splits in terms of the maths to work out my pace. But, I thought that was quite a novel way of just taking your mind off the pain, because when you get into that zone, anything you can do to lighten the mental load away from the fact that all you want to do is slow down and stop because you're in agony, anything you can do is worth trying.
Yeah, that first 30 kilometers, I usually, when I get an unconstructive thought come in that I need to push out. It happens every few minutes, every 5 minutes, and that's a thought that I need to push out. I need to keep these things positive. But towards the end of the race, they start coming in every 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and then maybe the last few kilometers, every 3 seconds, you're pushing out a thought that you don't want in there. So for me, when I remember in Toronto when I was going for the Olympic standard for 2012, and I ended up getting it, but I was using my arms and I was pretending they were attached to my legs with strings, and I was a marionette, and I just was using my arms to get my legs going, which I couldn't feel that well. So that was distracting me from those thoughts that were coming in, and feeling like I was in control of my legs, though
maybe more than you were.
Part of my brain was telling me I'm not in control of my legs, but I want it to be, so I came up with a new way of being in control of them.
You've got to do anything to get your mind off the pain. Now, we're watching the elite men. I just want to give you a quick update on the split for the women. Galleta Burka and Hiwot Gebrselassie have gone through 15k in 50 minutes, almost 50 minutes flat, which is 2:20 pace. So they are on course at the moment to absolutely smash the pre-existing course record. But this is bold, and there's a very, very long way to go. And I just hope, Eric, from the point of view of Gebrselassie, her current PB is 2:25, which she set last year when she won Tiberias. I really hope the same doesn't happen to her this year that happened last year when it unravelled towards the business end of the race. It's a very, very bold early pace from these women. 2:20 pace after 15k.
I hope our pacers are up for this job, because that's a quick time on the men's side as well for an average guy marathoner.
That is certainly the story as far as the elite women are concerned, is just how bold they've been in the early stages. And we'll have to keep an eye on where the rest of the women are. Just to give you an indication, Herpa, the very talented teenager, has gone through a minute and a half slower than that. She's gone through in 51.5, so a very sensible pace for her, running 2:25. And it's not beyond the realms that although she's a minute and a half detached after 15k, if it begins to go wrong for these two women, she could become a feature come the leaderboard at the very end of the race. Really interesting dynamic unfolding in this elite women's race.
And Eric, tell us a little bit about the dilemma that runners face when somebody breaks ahead, and you've got to make that decision. You've got to kind of balance the need to stick with the group, to run with the other, to race against the other runners, as opposed to just running your own race at your set pace.
Yeah, for me, I like to think that I'm racing the marathon when I go into an event, when I go into racing the full. And so what other people do in the race affects me less, because I'm racing the course, I'm racing the distance, and then more towards the end of the race, when I have the knowledge under me that I'm going to be okay at this pace, and I'm now racing at the last few kilometers, then I'll start looking around. But early on, I'm racing, not necessarily the bodies, but I'll certainly run with them and use them for help. But other people I know, they really like to get in there and mix it up with people and use that as motivation, and feel like they're not just racing themselves, but they're out there racing each other. So they'll be more apt to respond to them and go with them. But I think that it's your mindset going in that counts.
But in theory, if you set out to run a 2:22 marathon, you could run that at your own pace, and it doesn't really even matter where anybody else is on the course, right? In theory.
No, that is in theory.
It doesn't always work that way.
It doesn't, especially when, I could run with that group, and it would be slightly easier to run with them, so I'm going to go try and run with them, and it would be easier that way.
Yeah. So we're seeing the lead men on the left, a group that has gotten a little bit smaller, and the lead women on the right. And we are 54 minutes into the Ottawa Marathon. It's down to 2 women in that elite group, but as Rob mentioned a moment ago, that could change. We could see somebody catching up to that group, especially if they're not able to maintain this blistering pace that they've set early on. Rob mentioned the the mind games that people play as they're running. What else do you think about when you're running a marathon, Eric?
I go through, I break down the marathon 3 to 4 weeks out with Kim Dawson, my sports psych coach, and we break it down into 5-kilometer sections, and then within each 5-kilometer section there's things that I focus on. So I'm thinking about those things that, are starting to come automatic because I also think about them in training, but specific to the course, where I want to be, what I want to be working on at certain points of the course, and then being focused enough when we come into aid stations and there's bottles set out on the table that I don't want to be daydreaming when I go in there. I want to be able to get my bottle, drink it, and get back into a good groove afterwards. And the rhythm is very important, so always being mindful of, I want to run a certain pace, but I also want to listen to my body as well, and I want to tell myself that hey, I want to get to the finish line too in a it doesn't have to be a very specific time, but I want to get there, so got to listen to the body.
So it's very tactical. And you wouldn't think that you'd spend all that time, more than 2 hours, thinking about what you're doing, but it sounds like that's what you have to do.
It does help. I think that cushions, the stuff that comes up during the race. I remember going around a 90-degree turn once in one of the marathons, and I felt a slight tweak in my calf, and I had to then deal with what I thought was going to all of a sudden end my race, but it really, was not that big of a deal, but it felt like a big deal when it happened in the moment, and I had to calm myself down and realize that I don't want to get more tight, so just relax and don't worry about the pace for a couple kilometers and relax, and, it ended up being fine. And I think that not blowing things out of proportion really helps in the marathon, so having a level head.
I'm only an amateur runner, but I try to think about things other than running when I'm running a marathon, at least for parts of the race, just to occupy my mind. You mentioned math before, Rob, and I've done I do sometimes will do some pace calculations just as a way of occupying my mind. If I cross a particular kilometer marker, I'll look at my watch, do the math, and just kill some time by figuring out what that translates into over the course of the entire race. I remember in Boston in April, you and I were both in Boston, Eric, and I decided, I guess with thinking about this now, I think I decided at a certain point to devote each mile of the race to one marathon that I'd previously run, because Boston was my 27th marathon, I think, so I had run 26 already. So I figured I'll just start as I cross each mile marker, I'll think about the marathon that I'd previously run, and I know them in my head in order. So it gave me something to think about.
And the other strange thing that happens, and I for the life of me, having run for so many years, I cannot remember why certain song lyrics come into your head, and it's not always as obvious as a song you heard the previous day. Sometimes it can be a song you haven't thought about or heard for years and years and years, and all of a sudden it'll pop into your head. Have you both had that?
I've had that, and I wonder if it has to do with the rhythm of your footsteps reminding you of a song, or something like that, reminding you of the beat of that song, maybe. I don't know what it is, but that's happened to me for sure.
I don't think we're often that focused for that long a period of time in our lives these days. So for us to get into a 2-3 hour race and be focused for that long, maybe the mind's being able to conjure up stuff that normally it is not able to, and it just comes in, and you're more clear-headed.
And the other thing is, once a certain lyric gets in your head,
you can't get rid of it.
It can be there for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Very strange. The nuances and idiosyncrasies of being a marathon runner at any pace. I hope this hasn't put you off. If you're watching this at home and you're thinking about running a marathon, I hope we haven't put you off with some of these tales. It is quite fun at the end of the day. Otherwise we wouldn't do it.
I always try to remind myself too, especially at some of the tougher parts of the race, this is what you trained for. You prepared for this. Trust your training, trust your body. You did the work. You should be ready for this. Runners passing through another aid station, and now they're just turning in front of the Canadian War Museum. and they're going to cross over into Gatineau, Quebec for the first time. There's a little bit of music for them, a team of drummers supporting them. So they're on Booth Street in Ottawa, just to the side of the Canadian War Museum, and they will pass into Gatineau and run for a few kilometers in Gatineau before they come across the Alexandra Bridge back into Ottawa near the National Art Gallery.
And Mark, they should be pretty close to the 20k marker at this point, because they were running just a shade inside 2:07 pace when we saw them at 15k, and now that they're into the hour, an hour on the nose is 2:06.5, so they should be very, very close to that split if they're continuing with this consistent pace of just inside or on course record pace of high 2:06s.
The pacer in the center, Kogo, he has been my pacer in Toronto for a number of races, and he's very, very good runner. Trains out of North Carolina and from Kenya, and he'll do an excellent job here as he's already doing.
Well, he's talk about an excellent runner. It shows you've got a pacemaker. He got a silver in the African Cross Country Championships earlier this year. You have got to be classed to be getting on that podium.
His coach was telling me at dinner last night that he was the last addition after someone dropped out, and then he ended up in a sprint to the finish coming second. So
wow.
that's just the depth Kenya has.
You can see the 20K marker just there in the background in front of the War Museum. That's the triangular shaped building in the background. And there is not, I don't think there is a timing mat at 20K. I think they put it at the halfway point. So we will soon, within a kilometer now, have the runners at the halfway point, 21.1 kilometers into the race. But they have now crossed into Gatineau, Quebec, and they are through 20 kilometers in just over an hour on the men's side in the Ottawa Marathon. How much talking is going on when there's a group like this at the front of the pack?
Not much, Mark. There's maybe a little bit of communicating with the pacers, and if I was in that pack and behind those pacers, I would be just communicating that they're doing a good job. I'm, happy. I'm checking my splits, but really I'm just letting the pacers do their job and take care of getting on the right pace and tucking behind them.
The Kids Marathon is on right now. For weeks leading up to Ottawa Race Weekend, there are young runners from all over our community who run a kilometer at a time or do other forms of exercise representing the equivalent of a kilometer. And we're going to see the winner of the Kids Marathon cross the finish line now. And some other runners coming in behind. And again, these are athletes who will do 41 units of exercise leading up to Ottawa Race Weekend, and then they would run the final 1.2 here and cross the same finish line as we will soon see the athletes in the marathon. And I think we're about to see the top girl cross the finish line now in the Kids Marathon as well.
Good work, just outside 3 minutes. And interesting for maybe a point for both you guys, I was listening to the mayor, is it Jim Watson?
Yes.
At the press conference on Friday, and I'm sure he was given some notes to work on with his speech, and he was saying this is the 10th anniversary edition of the so-called Kids Marathon. He said that, and I was really staggered by this, so I wrote it down, there's been a 300% increase in obesity in Canadian children over the last 25 years. Now, I know you're not alone in a statistic like that in the Western world, but I was absolutely staggered by that, bearing in mind how much of life here seems to be orientated around the great and beautiful outdoors. That's an unbelievable statistic, that obesity could have risen that much in 2.5 decades. So initiatives like this that have now been going for a decade are vitally important for giving children a relationship with sport that will hopefully stay with them for many years to come.
So you can see the many participants in the Kids Marathon running 1.2 kilometers today to finish off many months of activity. They're on the left of your screen, and the lead men are through the halfway point of the Ottawa Marathon. And the group of lead men crossed in 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 47 seconds.
Well, how good is that from the pacemakers? 2:07.5. Absolutely brilliant. And on Doru, by the way, he's just flashing up on my phone. He's only 45 seconds adrift, so he's still going, the man wearing the T-shirt. He's not in that elite lead group on the right box there, but he is not completely isolated on Doru, who finished third here 2 years ago.
So in that group of lead men, we've got John Career, Deribe Roby, Yemeni Segei, Adugna Tekili, and just a few seconds behind them at the halfway point was Werkuna Seyum, and then Ondoro was after that, as you say, some 45 seconds back.
Meanwhile, Burka and Gebrikidin still going. Fascinating to see how long they can keep this pace up for. On course for sub 2:21, which would absolutely smash not only the course record, but also the Canadian all-comers record, I think, as well. That at the moment is Corinne Jalella, 2:22.43. So a very, very bold pace being set by the two leading women at the moment.
There you see the two lead women, Hiwat Gebrikidin and Galleta Burka.
Burka, the smaller of the two figures, wearing the blue vest. 32 years of age. And now maybe just getting to grips with this distance.
And they're about to get to 20 kilometers here, so this will give us an indication of where they stand, and then we'll get their split times for the halfway point as well. But they have just passed the Canadian War Museum. That's the building in the background there. And in a moment, we'll see them pass the flag that marks 20 kilometers into the Ottawa Marathon. This will be an unofficial split time because there is no timing mat at 20 kilometers. They put the timing mat at the halfway point. There it is in the background. So they passed a few seconds ago in just under 1:07, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and if it was, then that again is still 2:21 pace. Wowee. They're really going for this.
Is that Kate Toohey that's the lead Canadian woman right now? Yes, that is Kate Toohey, who is leading the Canadian women. So we'll keep an eye on her as well.
Yeah, she's going well this year, guys. I made a note when I was doing my homework on her last night. She's dropped her 30k PB by over 2 minutes 20 seconds already this year, down from mid 157s to high 154s. So she's in form. 2:51 in Toronto a couple of years ago when she finished 14th, and she was 14th again last year in 2:55. Clearly in form and full of confidence.
Do you know Kate, Eric?
No, I don't.
There's the group of lead men.
Now, Mark, with the computer in front of you, have we lost Kip Tanui from this group? Because I've got certain updates coming to my phone,
we have.
and I don't see Kip Tanui's name.
He was behind Ondoro at the halfway point, so
right. So
he's not in that group.
So the defending champion looks unlikely to be coming home in front for the second successive year, bearing in mind that he had a rather unusual build-up to the race last year, having dropped out of the Vienna Marathon and deciding to come to Ottawa at the last minute. Kip Tanui is out of the reckoning here.
I can tell you who was in the lead group at the halfway point. John Career, Deribe Roby, Yemeni Segei, Agdugna Tekili, and Werkuna Seyum. Seyum, though, was about 4 seconds back, so he may not be part of this group anymore.
I think Segei now.
Yeah, I don't see him in there anymore.
Yes, Segei I think now would be fancying this one. He would have been a little bit wary of Kiptanui, especially bearing in mind Kiptanui's PB 2:05.21. Sege is sandwiched in between Mitty and Kogo, the three pacemakers still going, and all of them doing a good job. Sege has the course record here after victory 4 years ago. I think he'll fancy this now that they're over halfway.
So it looks like we're down to 5 men in that lead pack, in addition to the pace setters who are at the front of that group. And at the halfway point for the women now, it is Burka and Gebra Keaton who are still leading the way in just under an hour and 10 minutes. 1:09.59 was the split at the halfway point.
That is unbelievable. Almost under 70 minutes. That is so fast. They are both in uncharted territory. Burka, admittedly, by only 3/4 of a minute, but Gebra Keaton has never run inside 2:25, and I just hope from her point of view, Eric, that lightning doesn't strike twice. But you know, she, just to give you a little marker, as we do focus on the elite women, after she, you know, unraveled a little bit last year, she didn't run again in 2017, and I just compared her times. The only race that's been comparable, because she has run so infrequently since her performance here last year, she ran just inside 54 minutes for a 10-mile race in America last year coming into Ottawa, and she did exactly the same this year, almost identical times, just 5 or 10 seconds out. So that would indicate that she would have the capability to run a 2:26 or a high 2:25s again, but that wouldn't indicate that she could suddenly jump up and run 2:20. I really hope it doesn't unravel again for her, but the warning signs are there, because she's running way quicker than she's ever done before. And bear in mind, Gebra Keaton's half marathon PB is 68 minutes. She's only a minute and 50 odd down on that, with a long way to go. I hope I'm wrong, but Gebra Keaton has gone very hard, just as she did last year.
They are committed to this pace now.
Yeah,
that's for sure. So it's going to be interesting to see just how long they can hold on.
So once again, the 5 men who are leading the Ottawa Marathon, in addition to the pace setters at the front of that group: Yemeni Sege, Deribe Robi, John Career, Adugna Tekili, and Workuna Seyum. And Kiptanui, it appears, has dropped out of the race, Rob, because he has not even crossed the halfway point yet. So last year's winner, Eliud Kiptanui, will likely not repeat as the champion of the Ottawa Marathon this year. There are about, 20 athletes who have crossed the halfway point now for the men, and he is not among them. And then on the women's side, it is a 2-person race at the moment. Galleta Burka and Hiwat Gebra Keaton. All of the elite athletes are running in Gatineau now. Let's find out a little bit more about this section of the course.
Located in the Outaouais region of western Quebec, Gatineau Park is a 361 square kilometer wedge of parkland extending north and west from the city of Gatineau. Gatineau Park is a recreational destination offering public facilities including beaches, campgrounds, picnic areas, trails, and parkways, as well as stunning natural geological features, unique plants, and wildlife. The Ottawa Marathon skirts the southeast corner of the Gats, as they are known colloquially.
There are the lead men and the lead women in the Ottawa Marathon. An hour and 14 minutes into the race. The men will soon be crossing 25 kilometers, and we'll be able to give you an update on their progress and what kind of pace they're on. We are seeing a very aggressive pace on the women's side, as Rob has been describing, and the wind is picked up here at the finish line, so it's quite breezy today and a lot cooler than many people expected. It can be very hot on Marathon Sunday at Ottawa Race Weekend, but very cool today, and that is encouraging for all the amateur runners who are out there as well. And I must say I'm pretty pleased about it myself, given that I'll be running when our telecast is over, and that it could very well have been very hot over the midday today during the time that I'll be running.
Well, I was blown away by how hot it was last year. It was absolutely boiling, which explained why Elliot Kanuy's winning time last year was just outside 2:10. And just to give you another tiny little bit of context on the pace of the women, if the likes of Galleta Burka or Hiwot Gebrselassie were able to come home inside 2:20, only 6 women have broken 2:20 so far this season. So it's a very, very, very bold piece of running by the 2 women who are miles clear of the best of the rest. But what drama lies in store in the second half of this race? Well, you're in the best place if you're in front of your television to find out. There is a lot more to come in this race, I think. It's been brave, that's for sure.
Eric, have your best races been the ones where you've done a negative split, where you've run the second half faster than the first half?
I've only done that once, and it was in my first marathon, and part of the objective of that first one was to be conservative enough that I'd want to do another one, a second one. So so I went into it pretty quick, pretty fit, but I was conservative, and it was a nice way to run it. Felt great, like I was picking it up towards the end and aggressive, but
it is a nice feeling to still have some gas in the tank, right?
Yeah, but no, my personal best did come from, typically it would be a minute to a minute and a half slower for the second half of the race.
And is that consistent among elite athletes, do you think?
It is, really. I think even within like most race distance from the 800 meters up to the marathon, typically the first half would be quicker than the second half.
So you set an aggressive pace, and then it's about hanging on in the second half.
It's about who slows down the least, the second half, Even the 100, they say, is about that,
And that's absolutely the case with the 800 meters. Even the likes of the mercurial David Rudisha, it is about who fatigues least, because nobody, unless it's a pedestrian pace for the first 600, no one gets faster at the end of an 800. It is, as you've just indicated with the marathon, who slows down the least.
The men have crossed 25 kilometers, and they've done it in 1 hour, 16 minutes, and 20 seconds. And the lead group at 25 kilometers includes the course record holder Yemeni Segei, Deribe Robi, John Career, Adugna Tekili. Really, it's just those 4 runners now, because Werkuna Seyum has dropped back about 50 seconds behind that group. So 4 runners at the front of the pack, along with the pacers in the Ottawa Marathon.
1:16:20-ish, so yeah, they've slowed down a little bit. They're now outside 2:07 pace, but it's still an honest pace, and the pacemakers who remain have done a good job. Meanwhile, those lead women, 2 of them, Gebrselassie and Burka, miles clear.
When we show you the results, of course, we're including the pace setters, but we don't expect them to be a factor in the race later on. Technically speaking, they are allowed to stay in the race, but typically they don't. So it really is, although you're seeing 6 runners here at the front of the men's pack, it really is 4 runners now.
Yeah, well, Kogo and Miti, we would expect to see them disappearing. Probably the last of them going around the 30k marker. So unless they suddenly feel spectacularly good, 6 will become 4.
Dominic Ondoro is still in this race, though. He's about 1 minute and 14 seconds behind the leaders. So still there, still competing, and things can happen. It's not impossible for him to get back into this race.
You never know.
You can see the first 2 names on the list there are the pace setters, and then the other 3 are among the group of 4 who are leading the Ottawa Marathon right now. Segay, Roby, Tequili, and Career.
I think this is beginning to play into the hands of Yamane Segay, silver medalist in the World Champs 3 years ago. He hasn't really kind of put his head above the pulpit. He's been quite happy just tucking in. He's never been running left or right. He's just been sandwiched in between the two pacemakers all the way through the race. And the longer this goes, the more confidence he's going to gain, I think, that he could once again stand on top of the podium here in Ottawa, as he did with a course record 4 years ago.
Bit of climbing there as the runners ascend the Alexandra Bridge, the oldest bridge that crosses the Ottawa River to Gatineau. They are running from Gatineau now back into Ottawa. They will soon pass the National Gallery of Canada and then turn into Rockcliffe, where they will run for several kilometers before they head back towards downtown Ottawa and towards the finish line.
Three Ethiopians against one Kenyan, and it's Kenya versus Ethiopia in the elite women's race. Both of them making sure they get that liquid on board as they edge towards the next time marker. We've seen the men across 25, the women still to get there, and we will keep a very close eye on the women's splits, because it might give us an indication as to whether the fatigue is beginning to set in at what is a brutal pace, around about 2:20 on the nose, which would smash not only the course record but the Canadian all-comers record as well. Burka and Gebrselassie miles clear of the rest, but will that still be the case at the finish line?
The lead men now leaving the Alexandra Bridge. You can see the Canadian Museum of History in the background. And they are now about to turn onto Sussex Drive by the National Gallery of Canada and head into Rockcliffe. The lead women are still in Gatineau.
I don't know about you two guys, but I would have expected, what are we now, 20 past 8 in the morning. It doesn't feel to me as though it's any warmer than it was when we arrived at 6:15. It
feels cooler.
It's pretty
in fact.
cool. It's not getting warmer, is it?
I'm colder now than I was a couple of hours ago. I don't know if that's just the accumulation, but it still says 14 degrees on my phone. But it feels cooler.
It feels
than that.
fresh.
It
It
feel
really
like 14
does
to
feel
you,
fresh.
Eric?
It doesn't, no. It feels more like, single digits, which I said I like for marathoning, and that's what we're watching this morning.
Now we're sitting still, of course. The runners are moving. But when you look at last night, when the 10K was happening, runners were crossing the finish line completely drenched in sweat. It was humid last night. It's not humid this morning, and you can see the clothing is not soaked with sweat for the lead men, and they've been running for almost an hour longer than the winners in the 10K last night.
Yeah, it was certainly pretty sticky last night. So, Eric, you've been there and performed at the very highest level multiple times, an Olympian for Canada. Regarding the women, if the wheels are going to come off, at what stage would you expect this pace to slow, if it's going to happen for either of them?
Well, for men, often you get the pacemakers dropping out at 30 kilometers, like you mentioned. So that's often a time that I know I've experienced some lulls with the pace dropping after losing a pacemaker. Now, for the women, I would say once it gets into that last 8 kilometers, so you're looking at 34 kilometers into the race, 35 kilometers, that's when you're really, that bonk that you're always trying to avoid as a marathoner starts to become, it could happen then. And anywhere from 32 kilometers on, I would say, is where it'll really get interesting for these women.
All right, the women have passed 25 kilometers now in an hour, 23 minutes, and 41 seconds.
Yeah, so 1:23:40-ish. If it was 1:23:20, they'd be on 2:20.5. Now, bearing in mind, they went through halfway pretty much bang on 70 minutes. They have slowed a little bit from the halfway marker to 25k, so I wonder whether we are beginning to just see the effects of that very fast first half of the race on the elite women. We'll watch the splits very carefully on the next 5k as they go from 25 to 30.
Tristan Woodfine continues to be the lead Canadian man in the race as well. He's crossed the 25k marker in 1 hour 22 minutes and 37 seconds. That's a pace of 3 minutes and 21 seconds per kilometer. The top men, by the way, were running 3 minutes and 9 seconds per kilometer.
The elite women are definitely slowing. I've just had another look at my maths. They've gone through that last 5k split in 3:26 pace, which is around about 2:24 for the marathon as opposed to 2:20. So they are beginning to feel it, there's no doubt.
I tried once to run a few hundred meters at 3 minutes per kilometer pace, and I wasn't even able to do it for a few hundred meters. And these lead men are doing 3 minutes and 9 seconds per kilometer, 42 kilometers in a row.
I often think, guys, that television cameras are great in one sense because they allow us to get up close and personal with people we could only dream of keeping up with. Well, I'm talking on behalf of myself and Mark rather than you, Eric, but it would be really interesting for the averagely fit non-runner to have a go at this pace, because I'm guessing, I mean, Mark, you've just indicated a couple of hundred meters. I'm guessing the average Joe would probably do their running for a bus pace for 50 meters, and they'd have to stop. The pictures, because you see a group running together, television pictures can sometimes make this pace look easier than it actually is. For most average Joes, this would be flat out sprinting, and they'd be done before they'd done 100 meters.
Yeah, and we're seeing them running towards us. We're not seeing them zoom past us in these camera shots. And they also run, especially these African athletes, they make it look effortless.
Especially these guys in this lead pack, they're all moving well, and their form is rhythmic, and it looks quite efficient. So when you're efficient, it just makes a really fast time look even easier when it's not.
So the men are at about 28.5 kilometers right now. The women are at about 26, just over 26. They're coming up onto the Alexandra Bridge now, where we saw the men a few minutes ago. What's the worst part of the marathon course for you, Eric?
Ooh, I mean, I like flat courses, so whenever we go over bridges are never flat. So there's some overpasses in Toronto, and I mean, I've run Ottawa here in 2014, so I'm not a big fan of bridges, but it's something that you got to keep the same effort going up when you're going up a hill, so that you're not trying to keep that same pace going up a hill. And then for me, that helps me once I get to the top of the bridge to get back into rhythm, get any hill that's out there to get back into the same rhythm, so that the effort is not going way up when you're climbing.
And is there a segment of the course that you find the most difficult, just in any marathon, not because of the topography of the course, but just is it 38K? Is it 35K? Is it
I would say when I see 36, 37 kilometers on a sign on the side of the road in a marathon, I know that's a tough part of the race, because we're still 5 kilometers away from the finish, which is a decent amount of space and time. And but we're 37 kilometers into the race, and I'm using a lot of my strategies, my mental strategies at that point, pushing those negative thoughts out really as soon as they come in, and they come in often at that stage. And even races where I've ran well, sometimes the legs are really hurting at that point, 37 kilometers, but I know I have another 5K to go. So that's a tough part.
There's a great shot of the Alexandra Bridge that spans the Ottawa River between Gatineau and Ottawa. Canadian Museum of History on the left of your screen. And the women have just crossed that bridge back into Ottawa. The men did it a few minutes ago. Yeah, I find at about 37, 38K, you start feeling like you should be getting close to the finish, but you're not. And the kilometers seem to be further and further apart at that point. It takes forever to see the next kilometer marker.
That is very telling. When you start looking for them and you're thinking, oh, maybe they missed that one out and I'm already past it. Oh dear.
Yeah. That in any part of the race in a marathon, if you're looking for the next kilometer and thinking that it's 1 kilometer ahead and you get 1 kilometer 1 kilometer shorter in the race, that's never a good feeling to have. I like 5 kilometers to go because there's a loop in Guelph that I trained on a lot, and myself and Reed and other marathoners in Guelph, and it's 5 kilometer loop, and we would loop that quite a few times. So I can envision inside my head, actually within 5 kilometers to go in the marathon, that I'm on that final loop back on my training course in Guelph, and that I can envision myself completing one more loop of that course.
I've done that before too, where I start to think about where would I be if I was just out for an 8K run in my neighborhood. Where would I be on that 8K run right now? And that's all I have to do is just run home from that spot, and I'm at the finish line of the marathon.
Yeah, pretty much every marathon I found that I found the kilometer markers beneficial for that reason, especially late in the race.
Over an hour and a half on the board, and still nothing to separate Galleta Burka and Hiwot Gebri-Hedin, but we are getting towards the stage of the race where that very ambitious early pace could begin to tell on both women. Tegefa's doing a good job on pacemaking duties, both of them right behind him, nothing to separate them, shoulder to shoulder.
I think the men have just crossed 30 kilometers, so we should have some times from them in just a moment. It was just about 10 seconds ago that I thought I saw them crossing the mat. So very soon we should have some split times for the men at 30 kilometers into the Ottawa Marathon. And there's Ketuhi, and the men crossed at 30 kilometers in 1 hour, 31 minutes, and 32 seconds. And still it is the group of Yemeni Segei, John Career, Adugna Tekili, and Deribe Roby who are leading the men's race.
Yeah, so 1:31.5 at 30K. They're outside course record pace, which is Segei's time of 2:06.54 from 4 years ago. So it's still a decent time, but around about 2:08, and they have begun to slow down just a fraction. They're 3:03 pace. Oh, in fact, they have sped up a little bit from the last 5K. They've gone through 3:03 pace there, but I don't think they're going to be breaking Segei's course record. And there is the winner from 4 years ago on the right of picture. He looks good. He's up alongside. Is he a shade in front of the pacemakers? He's certainly alongside them, and that's the first time we've seen him take that position, because up until now he's been sandwiched in between Miti and Kogo.
And it looks like Deribe Roby has fallen off the back of that group a little bit. He's there in the distance in the background, a few meters back. So now it's 3 men who are leading the Ottawa Marathon: John Career, Yemeni Segei, and Dugna Tekili are the 3 runners at the front of this group, along with the 2 remaining pace setters, Kogo and Mite.
Yeah, and Adugna Tekeli, he is a really good athlete. He was 9th in the world half a few years ago in Copenhagen. He got a bronze in the All-Africa Games over 10,000 metres a few years ago. And he's also run inside the hour for the half marathon, which is a really good indication that there's class and speed in the legs. Anyone who goes sub 60, hats off to them.
So it's a group of 3 men leading the Ottawa Marathon now in this contingent of 5 that includes 2 pace setters. And now that they've passed 30 kilometers, it won't be long before the pace setters step aside. if they choose to step aside. Again, technically speaking, they are allowed to stay in the race, but it's very rare that they would. And still 2 women leading. You can see the men have just passed 31 kilometers now.
Dominic Ndoru still going. He's gone through 30k just inside 1:34.
And there are the 2 women on the right of your screen. Once again, Burka and Gebra Keaton.
You can see them coming up to Sammy Jabral. He's an American, he's Canadian, Sammy, and he lives in Toronto. I was talking to him at dinner the other night, and he just spent some time in Kenya training over there.
And he's got a best of 2:22, so that shows you the pace that these women are running at. And it looks as though it's, I was watching out for the name, it's Lucas McEnany, who's been tagging along for the ride, the 31-year-old from Canada, just on the left of your picture. They're still wearing those gloves, and no wonder it's a little bit nippy here at the finish line, and the flags are beginning to flutter a little stronger than they were an hour or two ago. I think it's getting a little breezier.
That's interesting, though, that Lucas McEnany has decided, as we've seen over the course of the first 25, now 28 kilometers of this race, that I guess if he wants to run a pace that's pretty similar to what the lead women are running, why not take advantage of the pace setter and hang with them for as long as possible?
Yeah, it's smart of him, and it's certainly helping the women out too, because he's able to kind of make it feel like they're running in a pack with him being behind and having the pace setter out front.
Still 3 men leading the race, along with 2 pace setters. So it looks like Deribe Roby has dropped back substantially now from that group of 4 who were leading the race. Those 2 men at the front of the pack, Kogo and Mite, are pace setters, and then the other 3 athletes, Career, Tekili, and Segei, are the leaders in this race. And you can see Roby was with them at 30k, but now less than 2 kilometers later, he is off in the distance, not even in the shot anymore.
Now, we've mentioned it's very rare for pacemakers to carry on. Usually, you do expect them to drop out not too much after 30k. It'd be fairly unusual to see them, or very unusual to see them still in the race at 35. I think if they were still in beyond 35, they've got intentions to finish. Oh, and as we say that, Kogo does the sign of the cross, and he steps aside, so we still have Miti in the race, but 2 pacemakers have become 1.
There can be additive incentives for the pacemakers to go a little bit further once they get past 30 kilometers.
Right.
But really, they're not training for a marathon right now. So the marathon, that extra energy system, it's starting after 30 kilometers. So sometimes they don't really know how far they can actually go when they sign up for the pacing duties, and they can commit to a certain distance, and then they'll just play it by kilometer after that, which I think is happening now.
And you can see Kogo in the background is continuing to run at a slower pace now. I don't know if that's just to shake out his legs a little bit, or if he's got to get to a specific point so he can get a ride back to his hotel.
That's what I was thinking. He wants to make the last breakfast back at the hotel. Yeah. Job done. 20 to 9. Go back and pick up his payday.
Well, Eric, it's been great having you along for the broadcast today, as it was last night. Great to have your insights as a 3-time Canadian Olympian and 2014 participant in the Ottawa Marathon, many times participant in the 10K as well. Canadian champion in the 10K here in Ottawa.
Well, Mark, my marathoning career started in 2010, but really the first, I'm going to say Ottawa back in 2002. It was the first marathon that I watched in person. So
Okay.
I'm going to say in 2002, my marathoning learning experience started in person here. So yeah, it's always a treat to come back here. So thanks a lot, guys,
great
for
to
having
have you
me.
here. It's been wonderful to have your insights, and we're going to let you step aside and watch the finish. Thank you very much for your time, Eric
Thanks for
Gillis.
Good
Thanks,
luck
guys.
with it. Good luck with the coaching.
Appreciate
Yeah.
it, Rob. Take care, guys.
And in a moment, we're going to be joined by the brother of one of the three athletes at the front of the pack in the men's race. Three men are leading the Ottawa Marathon: Eunice Chet, Adugna Tekili, and John Career. And John Career is the brother of Wesley Career, Boston Marathon champion, and a great figure in our sport. And Wesley Career is going to join us for the broadcast now as we watch his brother at the front of the pack. Wesley, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Great to have you here.
No, happy
Thank
to
you
be
so
here.
much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Jambo.
Jumbo.
You must be very happy to see your brother John at this point in the race with the leaders.
I think I'm excited. He has worked so hard. I have trained with him. I was supposed to be running with him before I got a shins problems 2 weeks ago. So I'm happy that he's doing well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what can you tell us about his expectations for this race and what you're seeing from him so far?
I think coming in, I think all we wanted to do was him to get used to the distance. This is his first marathon, and but I'm impressed. I think he looks good, and we'll see how it happens from there.
I think the pacemakers may well have helped your brother's cause because it's been very steady. They've drifted a little far outside course record pace, which was just inside 2:07, but it's been a really good, solid, consistent pace. So they've given him the platform for a great debut. And, bearing in mind, you'll remember all those years ago, when you run your first marathon, you don't really know how you're going to go until you cross the finish line. But so far, so good. Touch wood, as we say in Britain. This has been a great performance from him so far.
Yeah, I think the pacemakers have done a great job. They have, they have had a constant pace. It's always better to have a constant pace than to have those up and down. So he has worked really well for him, and I think, thumbs up to the pacemakers. I think they've done great today.
All right, let's give a quick update on what's happening in the Ottawa Marathon. Again, three men are leading the field. There is still one pacemaker with them. That is Mite, and otherwise it is Eunice Chet, Adugna Tekili, and John Career, who are leading the Ottawa Marathon. On the women's side, the pacemakers have dropped out, and we now just see the two runners at the front of the pack, as they have been leading this race for a long time now. Rob, you can see them there. That is Hiwot Gebreketan of Ethiopia, who is at the front of the pack, and right behind her, of course, is Galleta Burka.
Galleta Burka and Hiwot Gebreketan are in uncharted territory here. They've gone through 30k just inside 1:41, so they may have slowed down a little bit, but they're still running a fantastic race. They're well on course for the Canadian all-comers record, but as the two men alongside me know, most notably Wesley Career, so much can change in the last 12 kilometres, and now that we don't have the pacemakers, this is a race proper. And Wesley, you were saying about the consistent pace helping your brother John as the men edge towards the business end of the race. This has been a very, very bold pace by the leading elite women. They went through halfway, just inside 70 minutes, way inside Hiwot Gebreketan's personal best, and even inside the lifetime best of Galleta Burka, who was by far the quickest in the field coming into this. Very, very bold by these two women.
There's something they know that we don't know. Definitely their shape. They seem to be very confident with the way they have been training. They seem to be, in good shape, and they're looking good so far. So far, they're looking good. But definitely, they were bold to go at that pace. Beginning, I thought they were too ambitious. And sometimes in marathon you get too ambitious and then you tank, but it's working well for them so far.
We will need to keep a very close eye on this one, especially bearing in mind that Hiwot Gebrselassie led by such a long way here in Ottawa 12 months ago, and then her race unravelled spectacularly in the last few kilometres. She came home in second place, a very tired figure, and then didn't race again for the rest of 2017. And Galleta Burka, world indoor champion over 1,500 metres, world cross-country champion 12 years ago, in second place and hanging on to her younger Ethiopian rival. These two miles clear of the rest. But what drama lies in store over this last 12K for them?
You wonder how much it's on the mind of Hiwot Gebrselassie, what she went through last year, and obviously she has redemption in mind today, but you would have to have that nagging feeling throughout the race, like it all could start to unravel at some point, since you've been through it before, right?
Yeah, and it's a deja vu. You always think about that. You're like, okay, well, am I going to eat the tank? But also I think from the experience of last year, I think I hope she learned something. And, it's a marathon. Anything can happen. You can either have a successful day in that pace, or you can really, really suffer towards the end of the race.
I'm glad that it's as hard for you guys at the elite end as it is for the club runners and fun runners, because sometimes, especially on a course where, say in London for instance, where you're heading towards the halfway stage and you look across the other side of the road and you're looking at these elites who seem by your own standards to be floating along the road, you think, aren't you human? Don't you feel this? So it's nice to know that you do suffer the same as the ordinary man and woman in the street.
And that's the beauty of marathon. The beauty of marathon is, one thing is, no matter how good you are or no matter you're just a normal runner, we all have the same pain. We all hit the same wall. We all suffer the same. And that's the beauty of the marathon.
And we can see Eunice Chet has dropped back a little bit in the men's race. So now it is becoming a two-person race between John Career and Adugna Tekeli.
Well, this is fascinating. I thought the race was playing into the hands of Chet, the man who won 4 years ago. So he's dropped off this pace. Adugna Tekeli has also allowed he's allowed a couple of meters to go. Now, okay, maybe he had a slightly awkward moment at the drink station, but at the moment it's Wesley's brother John alongside the pacemaker Amos Mitai, and all of a sudden it's looking very good for your brother.
Yeah, I think I thought it was the water station, but it seems like Koske took advantage of that, Career John. And I hope that pacemaker can take him for some other kilometers, because when he drops down, it will just be him, and he will have about 7K to go by himself. But it looks good for him so far.
John Career across 35 kilometers in 1 hour, 46 minutes and 25 seconds.
Yeah, so still well inside 2:10 pace. It won't be a course record, but the headline is that Chet, the man who is the fastest on this course, has dropped out, and it looks as though your brother's talking to Mitai.
Well, it looks like he's dropping off.
Going.
Yeah, it looks like Mutai is about to get off. So I don't know.
No, he's picked it up a bit now, and he's catching up to him. But it looked for a second like he was going to fade away.
I think my brother maybe might have told him,
stick with me
for a little bit here, my brother.
Yeah, but it's interesting that it happened at the water station, because sometimes you can see a separation between the runners because they're grabbing nutrition at different points within the water station, and then they recongregate after the water station. But that didn't happen this time, and John Career now is the leader in the Ottawa Marathon, and he's put some distance now between him.
Oh, that's a quick distance too.
Yeah, look at that. Look at how much of a gap there is between him and Adugna Tekeli, who is in second place, with Eunice Chet in third.
Yeah, they've taken some significant distance out of the Ethiopian, and they've done so, as you said, Wesley, occasionally the drink station can cause you to lose a couple of seconds. By the way, the leading Canadian on the right-hand side is Kate Tui. She's run the 2:51, just inside 2:52 in Toronto a couple of years ago. And still out of shot at the moment. No gap between Hiwot Gebrselassie and Galleta Burka. They're still side by side in the battle for honours in the women's race. But John Career closing in on what would be a spectacular marathon debut. Only the pacemaker, Amos Mitai, is still going. And I wonder whether he can drag him to a marathon debut himself.
I wonder, because it looks like Mutai wants to finish this thing. It looks like he's being dropped, but it looks like he's not dropping himself. So maybe he has decided to hang in there and have a debut in his first marathon. And that would be good for him, because he's really run most of the race. So why not finish the last 7K and get to know the distance?
Well, he's not a bad runner either. He's gone inside 28 minutes for 10K, inside 61 for the half. He was second in the Nice half marathon earlier this year. He has allowed a couple of metres to grow between himself and your brother, but he's still ahead of Adugna Tekeli, who's in third place at the moment, if we include Mitai's second place as now being in the race proper. Put it this way, it's unusual for a pacemaker to still be in the race at this stage.
Even at this stage, yeah.
Because, normally, the contract will read you get to 35 or 30, and then you have a choice of dropping. So if you have already achieved that, it will be difficult to continue running as a pacemaker. So I think maybe he has decided and say, let me go to the hand, and that will be good for him, I think.
John Career is leading the Ottawa Marathon, and you have a really good shot there. It's from that perspective, of course, it collapses the distance between the runners, so it makes them look like they are closer together than they actually are. But you can see John Career at the front of the pack in the men's race at the Ottawa Marathon, with Mite behind him, followed by Tekeli and then Segei.
And by the way, I think Yemene Segei is beginning to close on Adugna Tekeli. The gap is not that big. There's Tekeli, and there's the winner from 2014, Segei. So he hasn't been, he's not looking overly comfortable, but he hasn't been completely dropped yet. And look at the cadence and the body language of your brother there. I think he looks good.
Meanwhile, on the women's side, it looks like Galleta Burka is breaking away from Hiwot Gebrselassie. There on the right of your screen is the women's race, and Galleta Burka of Ethiopia appears to be taking the lead.
And this will be the moment, guys, where we get to see whether lightning strikes twice for Hiwot Gebrselassie, because now that she's been passed, she's in that really, really painful zone of the marathon where she's isolated in second place. Can she carry on where she faltered a little last year in this race? There she is in the distance, Galleta Burka showing her class here. The questions are now being asked of Gebrselassie, and this is the point at which she's got to keep going.
And you can see the gap that has opened up quite dramatically here, about 33 kilometers into the women's race, 34 kilometers. And you can see John Career is now past 37K in the men's race. He's running towards the finish line now, heading back towards downtown Ottawa on Sussex Drive. And the runners will pass in front of the Rideau Centre and the Westin Hotel, and then do a bit of a loop along the canal before turning back towards the finish line here.
And look at what's happening in second, third and fourth. Now, sometimes these angles can foreshorten the distance. Adugna Tekeli has overtaken Mitai, the pacemaker, but it does look to me as though Yemene Segei is not too far behind. So we've got your brother going really well for the lead here. Tekeli in second, the pacemaker in third, but Yemene Segei seems to have weathered the storm, and the men in second, third and fourth are now separated by just a few meters, all of them behind your brother. Are you starting to get excited now?
Not yet. I think after 40K is when I will start getting excited. But those guys in the back are experienced runners. So you're running against a very good experienced runners and people who have already won. Yeah, and the women too. I think she's struggling. I think she has a cramp. So I hope I hope that does not affect how she finishes, because she's scrapping a stomach, the side of the stomach.
Yeah, Galleta Burka, we just saw there, was touching her side. I don't know what was happening there, whether she was feeling a cramp or something. She's still leading the women's race and still a bit of distance, but there you see her doing it again.
Yeah, that's not a good sign for Burka. She is a long way clear of Hiwot Gebrselassie, but now we are seeing the results of such a bold pace early on. It was adventurous, it was brave, but to go through halfway in the marathon under 70 minutes when you've never broken 2:20, well, now she's really going to have to start answering the questions. There you can see Gebrselassie just on the right of picture round the bend, as we now once again focus on John, looking in the distance to see how far ahead he is. And there are Tekeli, Mitai and Sege all running together in second, third and fourth.
And Wesley, is there anything you can do if you start to get those cramps, those sharp pains? Is there anything you can do to work it out while you're running a race and trying to win a race?
Normally, what happens is you slow down a little bit and then you look for a drink. That's what I always do. If I get a cramp, you slow down a little bit and then you get into a drink. If you drink something, some water or something, it gets to go away. But it's painful, but it's something that you can hold on for some distance and it can go away. So I hope she can hold on, and she looks good. I don't see anything that she's struggling, but...
John Career has just thrown some water on his head as he moves through the latest aid station. And he'll be getting to 40 kilometers in this race very soon.
They're not too far behind. I really hope that he manages to hang on. It would be a good story. That it's not over this race yet, is it, for him?
No, it's not. And that's what I was saying is he's an experience. It's a bold move for him. So I hope he can be able to hold on for some distance. But, we learn. And I think for him, he's learning. And whatever happens, I think he will be happy with it. But I hope he can hold on. But those guys behind are very dangerous because they are experienced and they're coming. They're coming for him.
Now, give us an indication. It's not often you're sitting in a commentary box with the brother of the man who's leading the race. What kind of personality has your brother got? Will he be getting excited about this? Is he calm? Is he modest? Will he be allowing himself to think about what a great moment this would be if he was to win the Ottawa Marathon? Or will he be focusing on every stride as it comes? What kind of man is he?
I think he gets excited. I think that's one thing that I've been trying to tell him is not to get too excited too early. So I think I hope what is happening is not excitement, but he looks good. He has been training. He has been working hard. He has put in the mileage. He has put in the speed work. So I'm hoping the excitement will help him through.
But it's worth pointing out this is uncharted territory for him right now. He's approaching 40 kilometers in a marathon, and he's never been there before. Right?
No, he's never even run a long run 40K. So this is completely uncharted territory. That's why I'm saying, for me, I can't celebrate yet. I think after he passes 40K, and then we can know.
So just to tell you where they are on the course, they've just John Career has just crossed Rideau Street, and he's now passing in front of the Westin Hotel in downtown Ottawa, and he's going to run along Colonel By Drive, turn over Pretoria Bridge, and then turn again on Queen Elizabeth and head for the finish line, which is where we are sitting and have been waiting for the last 2 hours now for the winner of this race. So he's into the final stretch here and will soon be at 40 kilometers in the Ottawa Marathon. And looks like a bit more of a gap has opened up in the last few meters here. It was getting tighter there for a few minutes, but now it appears John Career has created some more distance between him and the other three runners.
Yeah, two things have happened. He has managed to pull away again from the trio behind him, and interestingly, in that battle, if it is a battle for second, Yamane Sege has closed down on the two men in front of him. and he is now in the driving seat, having come through a bad patch. He leads the trio. He's in second place. Mitai, the pacemaker, now is almost certain to want to finish, and if he does so, he'll come home inside 2:10. He's now actually lost a couple of meters. Yamane Sege is in second place with his compatriot Adugna Tekeli in third, and the pacemakers in fourth. Yamane Sege is giving chase. Look at his cadence in the background. That gap is now shortening once again. Korea was pulling away, but Yamane Sege, who won this title in 2014, has obviously weathered some kind of bad patch, and he is coming back into this battle. This is not over.
No, it's not over yet, and Korir is trying to, I think his ends are slowing down, so I think he's slowing down, and the guys behind, they are working together, so that's the advantage they have. It's always an advantage to chase than to be chased.
It was almost like a decision was taken to work together there for a stretch of a kilometer or two, but you can see Yamane Sege is closing in on John Korir. It's difficult to tell exactly how much distance there is from this angle, but the gap has narrowed, and there's still quite a bit of time left in this marathon.
He is definitely closing with every stride.
And then, the question now I will ask is, how does John respond after if Sekere will be able to catch him? So that's the question. But, he's doing well. I think I'm happy, and I think he'll be happy with wherever results come.
As he should be.
Yeah, because this is an uncharted territory for him.
John Korir is leading the Ottawa Marathon with Yamane Sege closing the gap in the final 2 or 3 kilometers here. I think they're about to cross 40 kilometers very soon. Great angle there as they pass by one of our fixed camera locations. Still a lead of several seconds, but it's smaller than it was a few minutes ago.
The advantage too they will have is once they turn on 40K, they cross the bridge, the wind will be behind them. So right now they are on the headwind because they're coming the opposite of the wind. So I don't know. This is going to be interesting to see the finish.
Very, very hard to predict here, but in a moment, Mark, they're going to be side by side.
Yeah, we've seen him look over his shoulder a couple of times already, and Yamane Sege has made a very deliberate attempt here to catch up to John Korir, break away from the third and fourth place runners in this race, and you can see the gap closing stride by stride here.
It is experience versus unexperience.
Yes.
That's what I'll say.
Yeah.
So that's what we'll see. We'll see an experience.
And here goes Sege.
Yeah, he goes by him.
Sege
So
passes
we'll see
Korir,
if he
and
can
it
stay
is
there.
the 2014 champion and the course record holder, Yamane Sege, who is in the lead at the Ottawa Marathon just past 40 kilometers. And Sege crossing all the way over to the other side
To get his water.
which is interesting because they're on a turn here. So he's taken the outside of the turn, and Korir was on the inside in that final stretch, through the water station. So very soon they are going to be making a turn onto the Pretoria Bridge and then heading to the finish here.
The thing too that happened is when Sekere passed Korir, he didn't respond. So that means he's struggling.
He's tired.
I think he's tired.
Yeah.
So then the other guy too, the Ethiopian guy is coming too. So hopefully he can finish top 3.
Yeah, Adugna Tekeli is not too far behind your brother, and what a run by the pacemaker, by the way. Mitai, who's moving along nicely in fourth. He's going to have a marathon debut just like your brother, well inside 2 hours 10. And it looks as though Galleta Burka is still running fairly smoothly. We haven't seen her clutching her side with her right hand for a little while, as she did earlier on. She's undoubtedly slowing, but this could well be another great moment in a career that has taken her to world titles in cross country and the world indoor stage over 1,500 meters, but she's clearly suffering from the brutal effects of that pace early on.
You just saw Yamane Sege look over his shoulder to see what was going on behind him, and he's done it again now.
He's struggling too. I think he used a lot of energy. So at this time, it's survival for the fittest. So you're just praying.
They're all hanging on.
You're
now.
hanging on. You're just praying that nobody comes close to you.
Yeah, this is very interesting. As Yemeni Segei, look at him laboring.
And also, he looks to me, guys, as though he's waving a little bit. He's not running in a straight line. He's losing quite a lot of energy. He is absolutely shattered.
And if John can have a little bit of a gear, if he has a little bit of a gear and a little bit of a push, he can catch him towards the last part of the race.
Here is the second last turn on the course as they turn onto Pretoria Bridge. And then they will turn once again onto Queen Elizabeth Drive and head straight to the finish line. There are some curves in the route to the finish line, but this is the final turn from one road to another that they will make. Yemeni Segei leading the Ottawa Marathon with John Career in second place. Still some distance between them, but Segei definitely laboring after having closed the distance. He was well behind John Career, but closed the gap. And you can see he continues to look over his shoulder, and he continues to waver on the course. He's not always running in a straight line.
I think it's taken every bit of his energy to close that gap. And if your brother could come back this time, I don't think he'd have anything left.
Yeah, and then if my brother can just sprint a little bit towards the end, he can look. He's struggling.
Yeah.
He's struggling a lot. So,
but he has a kilometer to go now. He's passed 41K.
Yeah, but also he has opened, I think what he has done is when he passed him, he opened a huge gap that if my brother can notice that he is struggling in front of him, he can catch him. He can catch him.
I'm trying to remember a time when I've seen the lead runner spend so much time looking over his shoulder. Once in a while you'll see them check, but he's looking constantly over his shoulder.
I couldn't agree more. I was just about to say exactly the same thing. It's extraordinary because you can tell the minute you do that, your body momentum is halting and it's moving ever so slightly backwards.
And you're sending a message to the other runner.
Yeah, and you're wasting a lot of energy by doing that. That's the thing that I kept telling my brother when we were training, and I kept telling him, don't look back, just look forward and hope for the best. That's what you do. You just
can
go.
see when he turns, it's almost like he's running sideways for a stride or two. Which is not going to be the most efficient way, and yet it does not appear as though he has given up a lot of distance here. And now we're into the final few hundred meters of this race.
So if John can really if he has another gear, a little bit of another gear, he can catch him in the next 200 meters, and then it will be a very good sprint to the finish.
I think if
but he's running out of time, right?
Yeah, he's running out of space too. Yeah.
One thing we can say for certain: if Yemeni Segei does hang on and win this race, we will see a man in pain. The split second he crosses the finish line, he's clearly got almost nothing left.
But also, at least he has handed. It's not that it was given to him. So that's the thing about the marathon is, don't give it to him. That's what I always do. Whenever I run, I always say, even if I don't win, but I'm not going to give them. Let them hand it. So I think, and he's looking back a lot. I think he's wasting so much of his energy looking back.
But I'm not sure that there's time for your brother John to catch him anymore unless he really fades, because that gap has not closed substantially in the last few hundred meters.
Unless my brother really sprints towards the finish, but that gap is really, because they're coming here very soon. So I don't think he has any
we're talking about a few hundred meters left in this race. So you can see John still.
And he's looking at his watch. He's looking at his. Come on.
He's obviously suffering a great deal.
He's really suffering.
That's
and
amazing.
we can see him over there. He's coming. So, I think, my brother will run out of space to catch him. But,
And you can see the time as well, as we're over 2 hours and 8 minutes now. So there's been a slowing of the pace in the last kilometer or so. But Yemeni Segei now is thinking about the finish line, still looking over his shoulder. But I don't think there is enough real estate left in this race for anybody to catch Yemeni Segei. He's going to turn it on now. The crowd cheering as Yemeni Segei, the 2014 champion, approaches the finish line of the Ottawa Marathon. And Segei is going to take the 2018 title. A big win for Yemeni Segei, and obviously a great struggle at the finish after he caught up to John Career. And here comes John Career.
That is experience versus an experience, I would say that. So,
but what a debut marathon performance for your brother, Wesley.
209.
John Career crossing the finish line, 2 hours, 9 minutes, 14 seconds. A very strong performance in his first marathon. And now Tekili crossing in third. And then we will soon see the Pace Bunny.
He's calling for his brother. It's not often we have a commentator cheering on his brother. And by the way, look at this from the pacemaker.
There's the pacemaker.
He is going to be very, very close to breaking 2:10. Come on, keep going. I think he's going to do it. He's going to do it. You're watching
a debut.
You're watching a pacemaker break 2 hours 10. That is amazing.
Amos Mite crossing in fourth place.
Wow.
You see, my brother even does not look like he's wasted. So I think it's what I say. It's a learning experience, right? You learn from it. So I think he has a lot to take from today, and I'm happy for him. To come here. He's young too. He's 22.
Yeah.
He's still 22 years old.
Well,
so.
you've got brilliant stories there from all four of the men who've crossed the line inside 2:10. You've got Mitai the pacemaker, great debut. A wonderful debut for your brother. Tekeli's on the podium, and Segei weathers a really bad patch and somehow hangs on, but in doing so, looked behind him probably more times than I've ever seen from anybody winning a major marathon. He must have looked behind in the last kilometre and a half at least a dozen times, probably more.
Yeah, that is so uneconomical.
And considering how often he looked behind, he didn't end up actually surrendering a lot of distance between him and John Career. But big smile on the face of John Career at the finish line after a second place finish in his debut marathon. Deribe Roby has just crossed the finish line, and he's limping across the finish line now. He finished in fifth place in this marathon. But you are looking now at the women's leader, Galleta Burka of Ethiopia, who appears to have sorted out any of those issues with the cramping that she had, because she looks almost like she's running a little bit stronger now than she was when she was touching her side on a regular basis.
Yeah, she looks like she is going to win because it looks like the distance between her and the second place has opened up. But we're wondering what happened to the second place. Did it happen like last year again? And that's the question that we have to ask ourselves. Did she do the same mistake as she did last year?
Well, I think the best indication of that will be when they go through 40k, because I've got an awful feeling that Gebri Keedin will have unravelled just as she did 12 months ago, and we were worried on her behalf that might happen after her going through halfway with Burka inside 70 minutes. It was a bold tactic, but what a great race that was from the men. The first four, including a pacemaker, all coming home inside 2:10, and therefore the pacemaker and your brother, two of those four debutants. Great race.
It was a good day. I think it was a good day for all of them. The winner earned it, and I'm happy for him. I wish my brother won, but I think I'm so happy. I think the race played well. We were hoping for a faster time, but they didn't get faster time. But also, I was talking to the pacemaker and today and yesterday in the hotel, and I was asking him what was his plans, and he said, "I've never run a marathon before. I'm scared of the marathon," and I was telling him it's just a distance. If you're going up to 35, you've already run the distance, so it's just about surviving from there. And I'm happy that he was able to finish.
And it was interesting, Wesley, because you told us wait till 40 kilometers before you start getting excited about John Career being in the lead, and it was just before then that we saw Yemeni Segei start to make his move, and he eventually overtook your brother. But again, still a terrific performance for John Career. We're continuing to watch Galleta Burka of Ethiopia, who is well on her way to winning the Ottawa Marathon. she is approaching the 40-kilometer marker now, and we'll be able to get a sense of what kind of finish time she might be able to post. Remember, the course record for the women is 2 hours, 24 minutes, and 31 seconds, set in 2014. So it was looking for a long time in this race like that course record would be shattered. It might still be broken. She's approaching 40 kilometers now, so we'll soon have an update on her pace and be able to extrapolate that over 42.2 kilometers. But it won't be a 2:20 like it was looking for some time there.
No, she's definitely slowed down, but it's still been a good effort here from Galleta Burka, and assuming she does hang on, and she is looking good, and we still don't know how far behind Gebri Keedin is. That is if Gebri Keedin is still in second place. Yeah. But you know, this is a significant moment for Burka in her marathon career, because she's never won a major race at this distance. She was 12th in Frankfurt on her debut when she struggled and ran 2:30. She was 7th in Chicago with a 2:34, 3rd in Houston with a 2:26, and ran an excellent time finishing 6th in Dubai, running inside 2:21 back in January. This would be her first victory, and she lost a little bit of time there and stuttered into that drink station.
Yeah, she just
that tells you that she's hurting.
Yeah, she did just pass 40K as well. That was just before she got to that drink station, she was at 40 kilometers. So we're going to have an update on her time and her pace within a few seconds here.
Well, let me just take a rough calculation. She's still on track for a course record here, but she's drifted to, well, let's say she's running around about 2:23 pace, so it's an excellent time, and a time we've never seen here on this course in Ottawa before. So she has slowed, she has been struggling. She was obviously desperate for a drink there, because she almost had to stop and lose all her momentum to get some liquid, but this is a good run from Burka.
That's Sammy Gibril, the Canadian, who's the second Canadian man in the race that she is now overtaking, or at least running alongside for the moment.
And he's a 2:22 man, so if he was around a minute or a minute and a half off his PB, this would indicate that Burka may well, unless she slows down, she may well be taking Tigis Tufa's course record.
And she looks good. I think she looks strong. She's not struggling. Like you can look at the arms. The arms are not losing the rhythm. So I think she looks good. I think you see even the guy, Gibril, tried to go with her, but he couldn't hold on. So I think she's doing good. I think if she keeps that pace, I think she's going to break the course record.
All right. We for some reason we haven't gotten an update from her crossing the 40-kilometer mat yet. I haven't seen a time, but she's well past that now. So we will soon see her turning on to Pretoria Bridge.
There she turns. She went to get another drink.
Yeah, so she's hurting.
She's taking on a lot of nutrition here in the final stretch.
It is that, when she was cramping the stomach, I think she had a cramp. So she's trying to get rid of the cramp while she's trying to maintain the pace. So
Wesley, give us an indication. You're looking at someone who, just a quick
update. I just want to mention that Tristan Woodfine is into the final stretch now as the lead Canadian man. So we've seen already that Galleta Burka has passed the second place Canadian man, Sammy Gibril. But we're about to see Tristan Woodfine finish as the top Canadian in the Ottawa Marathon. That's him in the white shirt in the distance with the bicycle in front of him on the right of your picture.
Wesley, just a quick question on Galleta Burka. How impressive when you consider she's a world indoor champion over 1,500 metres, a former world cross-country champion, and now running world-class marathons. That's quite some range of ability across distance and terrain.
Yeah, it is. To see somebody who is a 1,500-meter runner to be able to come from 15 all the way to marathon is a completely different kind of pain, different kind of feelings, and different kind of training regimen. So it's very impressive. And also the speed she's running, she's not reducing. She looks like she's moving. When you look at the arms and the legs, she's still lifting her legs higher. but she's doing the same thing the guy did too, looking back.
By the way, as Tristan comes across the line,
Yep, here comes
he is
Tristan
going to
Woodfine.
annihilate his personal best.
Just under 2:19 for Tristan Woodfine as the top Canadian at the Ottawa Marathon.
Well, unless I've made a mistake, I've got his PB at 2:27 in Rotterdam in 2015. If that's accurate, it's an absolutely enormous PB.
It's 9 minutes.
9 minutes,
That's,
and he's in 7th place.
Oh, he's a top 10 too.
Sorry, he might be in 8th place. Just 1 second.
Wow.
No, 10th place. 10th place for Tristan Woodfine in the Ottawa Marathon.
With an absolutely enormous lifetime best. That's phenomenal running. Now we're approaching 2:20, so while he soaks up the applause, so too shortly will Galleta Burka. And just a little heads up here, course record, we know that's on 2:24.31. The Canadian all-comers record, the fastest time ever by a woman over the marathon distance on Canadian soil, 2:22.43. Is that going to come under threat here as well?
She's looking good and she's picking up. So I think she knows that she's within the record. And if she maintains that pace, we'll be seeing her come here very soon.
It's interesting to see Julius Kogo finish the race as well. Another one of the pace setters for the men came in 6th place in the race. So seen a couple more men cross the finish line, including Mike Morgan of the United States. But we are watching now and waiting for the top woman in the field, Galleta Burka, who at 40 kilometers was 2:14.56.
There she comes.
And
I think she might well break the all-comers record.
Yeah.
This could be the fastest time ever seen in Canada by a female marathon runner. She's now on 2:21, so she has 1 minute and 40 odd seconds left if she is to set that all-comers record. And by the way, it's going to be a good payday for her as well, Mark. 40,000 Canadian dollars for winning the race, 10,000 as a bonus for a new course record. So she could be about to walk away with 50,000 Canadian dollars.
so 2:22.
What is the time to beat?
2:22.43 would be the fastest time on Canadian soil. The course record is 2:24.31. I don't know if she's going to be able to make it here in 1 minute.
She will. She will.
You're
She
predicting
looks, I think she's going to, because she has about 100 meters to go, and she still has like a minute.
And she's increasing her pace. We can see her from this commentary position. She's getting faster.
She's getting
Here she
fast.
comes.
She's going to break the all-comers record. We're watching a piece of history here in Canada at the Ottawa Marathon.
Yeah, there she comes.
Here comes Burka.
What a wonderful day for her.
30
She's-
seconds to spare. This is going to be the fastest marathon ever run by a woman on Canadian soil. Galleta Burka is the champion and new course record holder at the Ottawa Marathon.
2:22.17, unofficial.
That is a brilliant run, especially bearing in mind how hard she went at the beginning of the race. She's never won a major marathon before. She has now. She's an IAAF Gold Label Marathon winner here in Ottawa. Brilliant run.
Big smile on her face as she crossed the finish line as well.
The feeling. It feels good to cross that finish line as a winner.
That is an absolutely brilliant run from Burka, and how nice for the race organisers that they've seen an all-comers record here on the course, beating the mark of Kareem Jalella that had stood since 2011. I'll tell you what, that 2:22.15 or 2:22.17, whatever it comes out at officially, that'll take some beating and could be around for a long time. Now the question, guys,
What
The
happened?
big question, what happened to Hiwot Gebrselassie? Has she managed to keep going? And if she has, how far behind is she? Because we didn't get any official stats for Burka at 40k.
Well, we can tell you now that Hiwot Gebrselassie was almost 3 minutes, 2 minutes and 40 seconds behind at 40k. And
Sarah Hall.
a minute behind her was Sarah Hall. So we could see a battle for second place emerging on the women's side.
Right, bearing in mind how much time that means Gebrselassie lost on Galleta Burka from 35 to 40k, I'm going to give a prediction here that the next woman we see coming home will be Sarah Hall of the United States. It won't be Hiwot Gebrselassie. I think the wheels have come off for the Ethiopian, just as they did 12 months ago.
I agree with you.
Lucas McEnany, another Canadian, has just crossed the finish line. He's the runner we saw running for a long stretch of time with the lead women in the race. And so he is the, well, they've tagged him as the second place Canadian, but I saw Sammy Gibril has crossed the line. So that might be a mistake. But anyway, we'll get that sorted out. But we have seen history here today at the Ottawa Marathon, the fastest ever marathon on Canadian soil by a woman. And it is Galleta Burka, breaking the previous record of 2 hours, 22 minutes and 43 seconds. That was set in 2011. So this is the fastest marathon we've seen. And is this
Sarah is catching up.
Yeah, Sarah Hall in the distance is catching Hiwot Gebrselassie. So
And
can she close in here on maybe a lifetime best? Sarah Hall's best time, 2:27.21. Maybe that's just out of her reach. Hiwot Gebrselassie is carrying on, but look how tired she is, and look at Sarah Hall, the American, closing. They're the athletes in second and third, but will their finishing positions be reversed?
Sarah seems to be pushing more than second place, but she's just
not a lot
coming.
of time.
Yeah, not a lot of time.
Not much space left in this race as Hiwot Gebrselassie makes a final push towards the finish line. At one point, she was with Galleta Burka. Now she is just trying to hang on for second place with Sarah Hall challenging her, but perhaps going to run out of time before she can close the gap enough to get second place. Here comes Gebrselassie in the final 100 meters of the Ottawa Marathon. And for the second year in a row, she will finish second.
She's hurrying, but she's surviving.
This is a much better second place than she had last year. Not only is she some 4 minutes quicker, she's hung on for a low 2:26. And look at this, by the way, from Sarah Hall, a personal best by a minute.
Yeah.
A brilliant run. Her previous best, 2:27.21. I think she's taken a minute off her lifetime best, and she's finished on the podium here in Ottawa.
Sarah Hall finishing third, Hiwot Gebrselassie second, and Galleta Burka first among the women in the Ottawa Marathon. Smile on the face of Sarah Hall as she walks away from the finish line. And very soon we're going to start to see a lot of other runners crossing the finish line as some of the fastest amateur runners make their way to the finish line in Ottawa. Wesley, I want to thank you for joining us. It's been great to have your insight, not only as an elite runner, but as the brother of the second place finisher in this race. Please pass along our congratulations to your brother John on a tremendous performance in his debut marathon, and thank you for being part of our coverage.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we enjoyed your insight. Thanks very much for adding to the excitement.
My brother ran faster on his BP than me, so I hope he has a better future.
What was your time in your first marathon?
2:13.
Okay.
And he ran 2:09. So hoping for the best for him. Thank you so much, guys. It was fun.
Next stop for him is beating your time in Boston, maybe.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, Wesley Career, Boston Marathon champion and a tremendous figure in our sport. And great to have his insight on any day, let alone a day when his brother was turning in a terrific performance.
Yeah, that was a great couple of debuts for two of the first four men inside 2:10. That's an indication of the class of this race. And I don't think the conditions were ideal. I still feel a little chilly. I've got goosebumps wearing the shorts. It hasn't really got too much warmer than it was 3 hours or so ago as we look at
There's Kate Toohey. Yep, Kate Toohey is the lead Canadian woman. We're still waiting for her to approach the finish line. And so far only 3 women have crossed the finish line.
Good running, by the way. I know we were sort of saying that Gebrselassie had allowed the wheels to come off on her performance in Ottawa last year, and although she tired and slowed a little bit, that was an excellent second place and a wonderful PB for Sarah Hall in third, taking it over a minute off the previous best that she set in Frankfurt, finishing 5th there last year. Excellent result for her to complete the podium. And Kate Toohey's best, by the way, is just a shade inside 2:52. So let's see if she can be inspired by the context and the home crowd support and produce her fastest time.
But I think Hiwot Gebrselassie is going to be a lot happier with how the race went this year. Even though the result was the same, finishing second, she's going to be a lot happier with how it went this year. And although she did fade in the second half, it wasn't the collapse that she had last year. And I think it showed that she has the potential to turn in some faster times going forward.
I totally agree. She was only a shade outside her PB, which is 2:25.45. And when you think that she went through halfway in 70 minutes, you know, the athlete she was 12 months ago, if she'd run 70 minutes for the first half, she would have unravelled spectacularly. I think she hung on really well for second place. Sarah Hall, I think, will be kicking herself a tiny bit, and she looked, bearing in mind she'd taken a minute off her PB at the finish and come home in third. I thought there was a little hint of disappointment on her face when she crossed, and I suspect that's because she realised how close she was to finishing second. And I think if the race had been another 200 metres,
I was just going to say,
she would have been a runner-up.
If the marathon was 42.5K instead of 42.2K, then I think Sarah Hall would have finished second. But I'm not sure there's anybody who would want the marathon to be any longer than it is.
Two excellent races as Toohey hopes to come home as the leading Canadian.
Yeah, and she still has a couple of kilometres to go.
Yeah, and what a performance by Tristan Woodfine. I'm 99% sure that my stats are correct, and his best is 2:27.55 from Rotterdam 3 years ago, and suddenly he's inside the top 10 and he's inside 2:20 for the first time. An amazing run.
Yeah, his unofficial time 2:18.55. So that would be exactly 9 minutes off his personal best.
Amazing run.
Tristan Woodfine, the top Canadian on the men's side. And you're looking at Kate Toohey, who is the top woman on the top Canadian on the women's side, running in front of the Westin Hotel. She still has about 2 kilometers to go in this race. And her personal best, 2:51.53.
Have we got a time for her at 40K? I know you've got the computer.
I don't think she's crossed 40K yet.
Okay, so we're just trying to watch out to see whether she might break that lifetime best and maybe get inside 250 for the first time in her career.
Yeah, seems realistic though with 2K to go, as she's got quite a lot of time left.
And I mentioned earlier on that she'd taken over 2 minutes from her 30K PB this year, so we know that Toohey is in good shape and is in PB condition.
Well, she's got 20 minutes left to run 3K, so that's well within her reach to set a personal best here. It's Kate Toohey, the top Canadian. That's the one remaining race that we have to resolve here, although it looks pretty much like Kate is going to win that. And we are joined now by Manny Rodriguez, who is the elite athlete coordinator at Ottawa Race Weekend. Congratulations on some terrific results and races this weekend, Manny. You've done a great job once again.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, no, I'm very happy with what we've seen. Been some fantastic racing, and then we get the new course record from the women.
Yeah. Great. Not just a new course record, but Canadian soil record as well.
That's what I hear. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So,
what was your vantage point for the race today?
So I watched the lead men's race unfold, which, again, very exciting because you had Wesley Correa's brother, John Correa, there in his debut marathon. And, watching him attack, he looked really fresh. But obviously the experience played a part in it because Yemeni Tesgay looked terrible and he still came back and did it. So it was exciting.
Yeah.
We were commenting to each other, and Wesley agreed. We'd never seen the winner of a major marathon look behind him so often in the last kilometre or so. It was a great effort for him to weather his bad patch, but he was absolutely shattered. He must have looked over his shoulder, Manny, at least 15 times in the last kilometre.
He put it all out there. I mean, I thought he was completely done at 35K. When they threw some of the, they were putting in 258Ks, I thought he's done, that's it, you know, we're not going to see him again. And somehow he rallied, and when he did, I mean, at 40K, he put a surge in. So I think, yeah, he was holding on by the skin of his teeth.
And also, you're looking at Mitai, one of the pacemakers, coming home in 4th place. 4 men inside 2:10. In these conditions, with a little bit of breeze, that's class.
The breeze was definitely a factor, and it is class to show that. I mean, I could tell from the lead vehicle is when we had the tailwind, we were dropping 258Ks. When we went into the headwind, it was 305s. It was making a big difference, so he did a lot of work. And I don't know if you guys caught when I actually told him, you know, you're done pacing. It was just after 35K because you're sort of pacing. And I basically said, no, you know, the agreement is you pace to 35. And after that, if you want to continue, you can. But you're a racer. So I kind of did that. And John Career was a little bit, what are you doing? And I'm like, this is what's going. And he's like, okay. And then they raced.
We saw that conversation happen a little bit there between John Career and again, we mentioned it at the time. This doesn't happen every year. I think we did see it happen once before.
Yes.
Did we not have a podium finish for one of the pace setters one year?
So we had a second place finish. Yeah. That wasn't as friendly. So what it was is a Kenyan pacer with an Ethiopian runner. And essentially, the Ethiopian would not take the lead. He was like, that's it, until 40K, and then he just hammered him down.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is seemed to be a lot more friendly and cordial.
But it's as we've talked about, it's within the rights of the pace setter to keep going if he wants to, right?
Exactly. Yep.
And so we actually saw 2 of them cross the finish line.
Yeah.
And one of them in 4th place. So that's one of the quirks of long distance running for sure.
And what about that women's race, Manny? Because you told me over dinner the other day that they were going to go fairly hard at the beginning and then ask for an increase at 10K. My goodness me, they were absolutely flying. Through halfway in 70 minutes, we knew that they were going to start to suffer. An all-comers record, a piece of history for Galleta Burka. Great run from her. But we were also saying, although Gebrselassie finished second again, and although she slowed again, that was a much better performance from her because she only finished a shade outside her PB. A really, really good run to hang on because going through halfway in 70 minutes for her was way, way inside her lifetime best. She has clearly learnt from her experience here 12 months ago.
She did, yes. And so it's great to see her finish strongly also. I mean, so that's a big thing. I only got the splits. I didn't get to see the women's race, but the splits that I was getting from them, they were flying right off the bat. They didn't relax through the first 10K. They were going hard.
It was amazingly bold from both of them. And also Sarah Hall came third, and we were joking just before you came and joined us that if the race had been an extra 200 metres, Hall probably would have beaten Gebrselassie because she was slowing down so much just towards the end. A lifetime best for the American by a roundabout or just over a minute. Great run from her to complete the podium.
It is an excellent run. No, that was a great performance by her.
Kate Tuohy, by the way, has crossed 40 kilometers in 2 hours, 36 minutes and 9 seconds. She's running at about 4 minutes and 7 seconds per kilometer through the first 40 kilometers, which puts her on track to finish in another 8.5 minutes or so, which would be a personal best for Kate Tuohy. Her previous personal best, 2:51. She's on track to be in the range of 2:46 today.
Maybe even 2:45 if she manages to keep going. PB by nearly 7 minutes, bearing in mind that Tristan Woodfine broke his PB by about 9 minutes for the Canadian men's title. Inside 2:19 from a 2:27 PB. Great run from him as well.
Fantastic performance, It's great to see, that we have some Canadians that are starting to really pick it up because it's been a little while since we've had great, performances there.
Following on from Rachel Cliff yesterday, and 5 women inside the top 10 in that 10K. It's been a good weekend for the Canadians.
It has been, yep.
And Manny, you must be happy with the weather because we've had hot days at Ottawa Race Weekend. in the past few years, and earlier in the week we had a forecast that was calling for a lot of rain this weekend, and that didn't end up being a factor.
Yep, no, I was, especially for the marathon, yesterday was still a little bit warm and humid, but today it was amazing. I mean, we had the wind, but I'll take the wind any day. It kept them cool, it kept them moving fast, so yeah, I'll take that any day.
Yeah. This is actually remarkably cool for the Sunday morning of Ottawa race weekend. We don't always have this kind of luck. And given that in about 20 minutes I'm going to start running this course myself, I'm happy for these cool temperatures because I'll be running during the middle of the day. And you know, I was worried that it was going to start to get a little bit hot, but I'll be at least starting with some cool temperatures.
Now, I know we'll be paying full attention to Tuhi when she gets across the line. We haven't really had a chance to talk about this unusual way to run a marathon. Are you looking forward to running entirely on your own? Or, I mean, I guess it's just the same as another training run, isn't it? Because we were chatting, the official cut-off is 7 hours as we're watching Tuhi grind out these last couple of kilometres. You probably won't see anybody else on the course as far as your fellow competitors are concerned until about the last 5 or 6K.
Maybe not even then.
Talk about the loneliness of the long-distance runner.
Yeah, so for those people who don't know, basically once we wrap up our coverage in about 20 minutes, and then Timothy Walker is going to be here with a celebration show at 10 o'clock, I'm going to walk over to the start line and I'm going to start running, and I'm going to run the entire marathon course, most of which will be open to traffic again. They don't keep the course, the front half of the course open, of course, because everybody's been through it already. But this started, Rob, with your comment last year. You pointed out that we were on the air for 3 hours after the marathon started, and that the course was open for 7 hours, so that in theory somebody like me could complete the television coverage and then go run the marathon. And that idea stuck in my head for the last year, and a few months ago I was giving a talk about the role of luck in our lives, and I was using marathon running as an example of that. And I was talking about how some people start at the back of the pack and never catch up in life, and how we all need to be mindful of that. And so in preparing for this talk, I was reminded of the fact that I had the opportunity to do the television coverage and then run the Ottawa Marathon again, and I thought, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to use it to make this point that you know, some people start at the front of the pack. Some people have the opportunity in life of being born in a country like Canada, being born in a place and time like Ottawa, Canada, in this time in our history, which is a great time to be alive. And I thought, why not make that point using this marathon? So that's what I'm going to do today.
Now, one question for you on a practical basis. I'm a guest here, and I'm delighted to be here. It's only the second year I've come to Ottawa. Do you know the city well enough that you would instinctively know which turns to take to ensure you're running the right route?
Well, I'm a little bit nervous about that, so I've actually prepared, and I've written out the directions for the marathon on this piece of paper, which is going to be in my pocket for the whole race. So I know the first half of the course, and there aren't a lot of turns, but there are a couple of spots where I want to make sure I get it just right, and particularly the part of the route in Gatineau, which is not an area that I run in very often, and it's, you know, the thing is, when you're running a marathon, you never have to think about where to turn.
Yeah, you just
follow
really whoever's in front of you, don't you?
And the course is closed. When you're running it by yourself, it's a different story. So I want to make sure I get it right. And eventually I'll catch up to the part where the course is closed to traffic and where there are still other people on the route. And then that'll make it a lot easier. But for the first little bit, it's going to be there's going to be some navigation. But all of which illustrates the point that I'm trying to make. When you start at the back of the pack, there are a lot fewer people supporting you. The aid stations are closed. You've got to fend for yourself, and that's the way it is in life for many people, including newcomers to Canada who have come from other countries, including people who are born into poverty, and including people who are born with physical disabilities. Not only in life can you be born at the front of the pack, but when you run at the front of the pack, you can take advantage of the networks and the benefits and the support that is there, that isn't always available to the people who come along further back. So that's all part of the story that I'm trying to tell with this run.
I always say, you should never feel guilty about receiving an opportunity in life, but you have a responsibility to make the most of it for those people who didn't get that chance.
Yeah. All right, we're going to say thank you to Manny Rodriguez and congratulations once again on terrific elite races. You lined up a world-class field in the 10K and in the marathon, and they produced some great results.
Thanks a lot.
Unbelievable. Four men under 210 and a women's all-comers record. Follow that for next year. Your work's cut out.
Yeah. Thanks, Manny. We'll let you step away and get back to your work. And in a few minutes, we're going to be joined by Timothy Walker here, who's going to be part of our continuing coverage on Rogers TV. We're waiting for Kate Toohey to cross the finish line as the top Canadian woman in the marathon. And in a moment, we'll see her coming across.
Good running this by Kate Toohey. Taken down that 30k PB, but this is the one she wanted to become the Canadian national champion and break a lifetime best. And certainly, as far as the splits were concerned at 40k, she was on course to come home in around about 2:45, which is a significant improvement on her personal best that she set in Toronto 2 years ago when she ran 2:51.56 when she finished in 14th place. And I hope she's getting, it's hard to hear the individual applause from where we are at the moment, but I hope she's getting a really good reception from the crowd. We can turn from our commentary position. It won't be too much longer before she's greeted by the sound of those cheering at the finish, and she can see the banner waiting for her now. Kate Toohey is coming home, and she is going to finish in 2:45 plus change, a massive lifetime best. She is the Canadian national champion, enveloped in your flag, and now has the sticker Canadian champion. And what a way to do it.
Great race for Kate Toohey. Congratulations to her. Top Canadian on the women's side in the Ottawa Marathon. And we're seeing more and more of the amateur runners coming across the finish line as well. Some very good times. Anybody finishing in under 3 hours, of course, is quite an accomplishment.
So both male and female Canadian champions annihilating their personal bests. Toohey by around 7 minutes. Tristan Woodfine by 9 minutes. What a great weekend it's been here. The Tamarack race weekend that offers not one but two IAAF gold label status races. A fabulous 10K on a very humid Saturday night, and two wonderful male and female elite marathons on a rather cold, blustery morning, but a blustery morning that produced 4 men coming home inside 2:10, 2 of whom were debutantes, 1 of whom was a pacemaker. And then Galleta Burka producing the fastest performance ever seen on Canadian soil by a woman, smashing the course record and producing the Canadian all-comers record. She'll be going home with 50,000 Canadian dollars, almost as big as your pay packet.
I won't be winning any prize money today with this race, although that's not unusual for me.
I think it's really important what you're doing, though. I mean, I know you talked a little bit about the fact you're taking off and running, but demonstrating what happens when you come from the back of the pack and how hard you have to work to actually get in there. So you're putting on,
I'll be putting this on.
Putting this on as
I'll be putting this on in the next couple of minutes and walking over to the start line for 10 o'clock, and then I'll start running.
Right, so 3:7:43. If you see this man out on the course, that's what his number is. If you live here in Ottawa, you've got to get out on the course and give him some support.
And you think that you might actually catch up to a few marathoners in the last 3 to 4 kilometers?
We'll see. There are people who walk the course, who walk the marathon. There are people who set out to run it and end up walking for part of the course if they don't have a particularly good day. So But I don't think I will catch anyone until very late in the race because I'm starting 3 hours after everyone else. So if you think about it, if it takes me an hour and 45 minutes or an hour and 50 minutes to get to the halfway point, that's 4 hours and 50 minutes for the people who started at 7 o'clock. That's a long time. So
you're super competitive. Is this hard for you? Is this hard to be at the back?
I'm not competitive in any marathon,
okay.
So there's no chance of me feeling any sort of competitive instinct when I'm running a marathon. I'm not going to be near the front. So today is all about the story that I've been trying to tell with this message for some time.
Well, your TEDx was brilliant. It really was. It was a great presentation and made me think a lot.
Well, thanks. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to it. It's funny to be sitting here at the finish line and seeing people cross the finish line, and I haven't even started yet. So I guess I count as the final wave in the Ottawa Marathon. There isn't really a wave start, but I'm sort of the second wave, 3 hours after the first wave.
But I wrote on Facebook when I got home last night about the fact that I was walking home, and there are cheerleaders who stay out there for the very last person, and I think that that's a great tradition that a lot of people say we will cheer as hard for the last one as we do for the first one.
Yeah, there are people who are out there cheering. There are people at the water stations. There are the extra mile crew, some volunteers who hang around on the course, and when they see runners coming, they join them, run for a little bit, offer them some support and encouragement, ask them if they need anything, any help, anything like that. So I'll be seeing the extra mile crew. They stay out there right until the course closes at 7 hours. There'll be there are lots and lots of volunteers, something like 2,500 volunteers who are part of this experience, and only a small team of people at Ottawa Race Weekend who work full-time on this event, 5 people. And the rest of them are volunteers, including Manny Rodriguez, who was just with us. He's a volunteer, puts in countless hours on the Elite Marathon and 10K programs, and just a great group of people who make this event possible every year.
He must be happy with what happened here this weekend.
Yeah.
Without any shadow of a doubt. I mean, I'm lucky enough to stay in the official athlete hotel. That guy's phone does not stop ringing. He's on the phone about once every 2 minutes for a whole myriad of issues, not just from the elite athletes, all sorts of inane questions from all sorts of people. Amazing that he gives up so much time. And I had breakfast with his wife and son, and his wife was saying that for a long time he had to take every single day that he worked on the Ottawa Marathon outside of race week, and there were many of them, that was using up his annual leave. Mm-hmm. And more recently, his boss has come to recognize the contribution he's making to the race and to the city. So those extra days, his boss metaphorically turns the other way and says, okay, Manny, I'll see you when I see you.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to say goodbye. But Rob, listen, it's been great working with you again as it was last year and last night, and really terrific to have you as part of our broadcast again this year. Hope to see you again in the future.
A pleasure. I wish you the very best of luck.
You.
I'm trying to think of another suggestion I can make this year that you'll adopt next year. It'll come to me.
I'm good for now.
Good luck.
But you brought your family with you to Canada this time, so I hope you continue to have a nice visit here in Canada and you enjoy the Canadian hospitality. And Timothy, I'm going to hand it off to you and Rob, and I'm going to head over to the start line.
Well, have fun, and I will talk to you Tuesday morning on the radio show.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'll find out how it went. Actually, I'll follow your number just to see.
Wow.
We were talking about Manny Rodriguez, and I was on the board for a number of years, and he was doing board work and he was doing the elites, and I think that was probably when he had a little more time, but he has been, I see him right there through the window of the tent. He has been incredible putting together this field. We're watching them now make their way over to the awards stage, and Canadian record, and such amazing, the men against the women last night was just so exciting, and a lot of what has transpired here is because of Manny Rodriguez.
Yeah, Manny has been absolutely pivotal to this race. I can see that, even though it's only the second year that I've been lucky enough to be involved. As we watch the runners continue to streak their way towards the finish. The official clock is now running at 2:52 3/4 as Mark Sutcliffe meanders his way across to the start, the very last man to cross the start line, and he'll be one of the last to cross the finish line. But the 7-hour cutoff is there. Makes a lot of sense. 3 hours for a live broadcast, 4 hours to do a marathon, and I know he's not going to be at the front of the field, but he's more than capable of running 4 hours. But he's probably got more danger of going off course than he has of not finishing, which is why he's taken that piece of A4 to make sure he knows exactly where he's going. But I tell you what though, Timothy, this has been an incredible day. 4 men inside 2:10 and a Canadian all-comers record for Galleta Burka, and both Canadian winners, Tristan Woodfind coming home well inside his personal best, and Kate Toohey taking 7 minutes off her lifetime best for the female title. This race this year is going to take some topping, because the weather might not have played ball, but the athletes really have. It's been a fantastic day of racing.
One of the things that I get to do that I love most about this event is afterwards, when I go into just not far from here, the elite area where the tent is, and I'm trying to pull out those elites to interview them. But the feeling in there some years is not great. I mean, in years that we've had some real weather challenges, and you go in there and you just see people who are really having a hard time. When I went in there this morning to start pulling out some of our winners, people are chatting and they're excited and talking about the course and a little bit of wind issues, but generally just really good feelings in there. And I mean, they know that a lot was accomplished here this Ottawa race weekend.
Yeah, it's been a superb weekend. When you package up the 2 IAAF gold label status races with the 10K last night, 2 fantastic races, and we've mentioned Manny and how hard he works. That whole gender gap scenario is really intriguing. I'm very lucky. Distance running is my passion. I work on a lot of events and a lot of races around the world. I've never seen that done anywhere else, and it does add a little element of intrigue to the race, that you're wondering whether the leading elite male is going to catch the leading elite female. Last year the gap was 3 minutes 10 seconds. This year it was 3:40. And Berta, the talented teenager from Ethiopia, just managed to come through and did so in fine style. So there are some unique elements to this race that you don't see anywhere else. And another example of that is what they call the extra mile. I've never encountered that anywhere else. And if you've never run the Ottawa and you wonder what the extra mile means, apologies for those of you who already know. The extra mile is simply a load of volunteer runners to whom you can wave if you're struggling, and one of them will come and do a mile with you, hence the term the extra mile, just to help you through that bad patch and that lonely patch if you are struggling. A really simple but very clever idea, and one that should be adopted by other races around the world. That's what you get when you come to Ottawa. You get attention to detail, and you get that all-round experience for the spectators as well as the athletes. The race organisers richly deserve to have 2 events back to back, day by day, as gold label status races. It's a brilliant weekend.
I'm so happy to hear you say that, because even though I'm not on the board anymore, some of the things that you're talking about were brought in when we were basically looking at how to elevate this event. The kids marathon that you saw, right? That was one of the things that we were bringing in and thought, well, how would this work? Because we wanted to get children more active, but run a kilometer and then do the last one here. And I think actually my daughter was in the very first one. When your mom's on the board, you have to kind of do some of these things, right? And so there was that. There was the men against the women, which, around a board table, you're trying to envision what these things are going to look like here, right? You're trying to imagine how this is going to unfold and what we could add to what was already an extremely successful event. And then came the gold standard, and we're very proud of what we offer here, and it's just a matter sometimes of whether the weather cooperates. And the sun is coming out now on the half marathoners, and this will again. We have another wave of excitement coming, right? And and thank you for being here. I know we're almost out of time, and we're going to be joined by our friends from the running room. But the fact that you could talk and look at your statistics there, that you have taken all day long the statistics on who's doing what, broken down to the second. So thank you for your work.
Pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. It will be a delight to come back another year.
Please do. Please do. We'll try and add something exciting for you.
This program is brought to you by MLB Extra Innings, part of the Rogers Super Sports Pack. Follow the teams and players you want to watch.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line.